I don't know what that was. We'll try this again. As I was saying, tomorrow, January 9th, 2020, at 6 p.m. Pacific time, we will have another conference call on the David Crowley questions. That will be right here on this same YouTube channel that you're looking at right now. So, I just wanted to remind everybody of that, kind of an open forum style. So whatever topics anybody wants to bring up, please bring them up. Obviously the chat room will be open. And if you would like to be a part of the call, let me know, and I will try to make that happen as well. I'll send you the call-in number. You can pick up your phone, call in. You can go online. You can call in there. You can join us however you would like to. We'd like to have another conference call, and Sophia will be joining me, and probably a couple other people will also be joining me too. We will see. I'm also going to give you a quick look at the back of the book cover, so you'll get a quick glance at that. Not that much really to see there, but I think you'll kind of see where the book is going. So we'll have that as well. And maybe a couple other things. One of the things that I would like to really talk about again is Eric Nelson's sloppumentary. I'd like to talk about it maybe one more time and then never think about it ever again. What I was saying in the other stream before I got dropped off is that, we've been, I was thinking that movie came out in 2017, and it just seems like a lot longer. Time seems a lot longer, but that movie is just, it's so badly made. What I was saying in the other streams, it's made so poorly, so badly, that you would almost think that Eric Nelson was on our side, that he was with us, that he was helping us out, that he was consciously, not just subconsciously, but consciously helping us out to create more awareness about the questions, and for more people to understand that there is no proof that David Crowley is guilty. However you want to cut it, however you want to slice it, it just is not there. It doesn't exist. That's not going to stop the Apple Valley Police Department from never discussing the case unless we bring it up. And it's not going to stop certain family and friends from acting like David Crowley is guilty. They want to keep their blinders on. If they want to keep their blinders on, that's fine, but not everybody does. Not everybody wants to be so blinded by a bunch of lies. Some people actually like truth. So for those people, we'll be discussing the sloppumentary, and then maybe even the documentary that Christian Coffins is actually working on. Maybe we can get some ideas for that. But whatever anybody wants to talk about, as far as related to the David Crowley case, bring it up. Maybe we can talk about, I know Sophia has posted in the group, we posted in the group about the Ben Swan interview with Danny Mason. So if you haven't seen that, it's probably good to go and check that out at least once. Count how many times Danny Mason says "on it." It'll be a lot. Don't do a drinking game to the "on it," because you will be ripped very quickly. So yeah, that was definitely one of the big things that kept me going on the case so early on, was the Ben Swan interview with Danny Mason. Just even Ben Swan looked uncomfortable, seemed very uncomfortable. So I don't know. That whole interview was weird. That whole time was so weird. It was just like everything was just properly laid out, and the official theory, they rolled out the red carpet for the official theory. And the people rolling out the red carpet were not the ones you might think would be rolling out the red carpet. So they were supposed to be credible. They were supposed to give you a credible source. And, it's not just those crazy people, it's, that are saying that David Crowley is guilty. It's us too, That's what the Gray State team and those people, the friends, that's what they were all saying. Like they're some credible source. Obviously, if they really think David Crowley is guilty, they are not a credible source. They are not someone that people are going to take seriously, because they're just full of crap. Full of garbage, for all of you children out there. So we will keep going on. We'll talk about the sloppymentary. We could talk about Danny Mason, Ben Swan. I'll give you a quick little preview of the back of my book. Maybe we'll go through some other things. I've been debating about cropping the image that just shows the three bodies. Been debating maybe cropping the image to just show David. So I don't know what you guys think about that, but I might just crop it up, see what it looks like. I mean, the one that we got is in a PDF, so it's not like it's the actual source. So it does look kind of pixelated, even in the PDF that it came in. So it's an image inside of a 40-page PDF. And so it looks pixelated a little bit, but you can make out, I mean, you can pretty much see where David's eye sockets are and the back of the skull, and you can see that there's still he's got the beard pretty much on half of the face that's left. The whole left side of this area is all just gone. It's just blown away, so that's where the exit was, on the left-hand side. No entrance wound, so it's got to be, through the mouth, most likely. It's one of the only things that would really make sense. Unless he shot himself on left-sided curve. No, just not going to even go there. So we can discuss whatever you guys want to talk about. We can discuss Christian Coffin's the real documentary that he's making, a docu-series basically, about this case and what should be included, what we should focus on. And I have not really followed up on seeing about the whole podcast, so I know we're trying to get some ideas for the podcast, some show ideas. It would be a monthly podcast, so we only need 12 of those, 2 hours long, and that's it. And we'll see if that works out. That would be great. Eric Spitfire Wilkinson has offered to let us have one of his weeks, so we'll see how that works out, because it will be on a Wednesday. That might make it a little difficult for me, but be a lot less work, really, because then it's just us talking. But really, I don't know. Think about it. You'd think it'd be a lot less work. In some cases, it might be a lot more work. I don't know. So there's that. And then, open forum, whatever anybody wants to talk about, we'll talk about it all. Just wanted to give you that brief update. I had asked in the group, the Justice for David Crowley and Family Facebook group, I had asked what people, if you had the opportunity to ask a soldier that worked with David, that served with David, if you had the opportunity to ask a soldier that served with David any questions, what would you ask? Great responses. If you have not left a question in the group post, there's still time to, and you never know, we might get some answers. Very soon from one or two, maybe even more soldiers who served with David. Get some background on David Crowley. If there's any soldiers out there who have served with them, and if you are willing to talk on public, talk in a public forum, or whatever you're open to, even if it's just a written statement or anything that you would like to say. If you're open to us giving you a list of questions, I'd love to do that as well. Whatever you're open to, just to help us get some background on David. You have to remember, David was out of the military in 2009. What's interesting about David's military service, quickly, is that he was he was on Facebook in 2007, at least he's a part of a group in 2007. So during his service times, he's on Facebook posting stuff. And it's interesting, if you have not seen that, we have the document BCA 485. It's on my website, thegraystage.wordpress.com. Scroll down to the very bottom, you'll find it, BCA 485. It has about, must have at least 50 to 100 pages of just social media content. Even the stuff that was pulled down, apparently. But if you go to some of the earlier stuff, it is from 2007, and it's like he's part of some Facebook group, and they're talking about the war. So I found that fascinating too, and there's some interesting stuff in there. You can get a good understanding of David's views while he served. It was just kind of weird that he was posting, so openly and so honestly on Facebook, in the Facebook group. I don't know if it was a private group or not, but I was just kind of fascinated by that. Trying to find out anything from David's military days, who he served with, so if you're out there, I'd love to chat with you. You can leave me an email at mbstalkradio@gmail.com, and I'll be more than happy to help you, give us some background or whatever you want to say about David. Even that Joseph Seaton guy, who says in the sloppumentary he's listed as David's commanding officer. It doesn't say what commanding officer, it doesn't give the rank, all that good stuff or whatever. But I was contacted maybe a year or two ago. Couldn't have been too long, because it was after the sloppumentary came out. I was contacted by somebody who claimed to be a soldier that served with David, that said that Joseph Seaton was not David's commanding officer. So that's interesting too, and have not been able to get a hold of that guy since then. And I'm still trying to get a hold of Mario, so I will again try to reach out to him. He's a guy he's an Italian filmmaker who was making a very similar film to David at the same time, and found that he was surrounded by Masons and was threatened to stop going there, stop working on this film. And his film is very eerily similar to David's trailer. They're both trailers, sorry. There is no movie for either project, but they're just both movie trailers. But I will try to see what I can find out about Mario, see if he's even responded to. I don't think he's even looked at the messages. I know he had to get another Facebook account. So Mario, if you're out there, please contact me just to let me know that you're okay. That's it. You don't have to tell me anything else. But so that's about all I wanted to say on this. We will see you hopefully tomorrow. Tomorrow is January 9th. Thursday, January 9th at 6 p.m. 2020 USA Pacific time. We will have another conference call, open forum style, and I'm looking forward to hearing from everybody there, getting all of your views. Let me know what you think, all that good stuff, and keep up this good fight. Watching the sloppumentary reminded me why we do this, why we're doing this, and so I'm, it keeps me going. Things like that, even though I hate to look at the things in the sloppumentary, it keeps me going. So and I will be streaming on my backup channel in a few minutes. Hey Bugs, how you doing? So I'll be going to my backup channel, gregfernandezjr.com, on youtube.com, and I'm going to try a few things. I'm going to try streaming a few things. We'll see what happens, depending on how that goes. You never know. So keep up the good fight, good peeps, and I'll chat with you all soon.
des Himmels prächtigen Land laufen Brüder eure und laufen Brüder eure Mann freudig wie ein Held zum Siegen, wie ein Held zum Siegen laufen Brüder eure Mann.
Thank you everyone for joining us here. This is another live stream. This is David Crowley Questions, the live conference call, January 9th, 2020. First live show of 2020. So I want to thank everybody here. And I'm going to just kind of make sure everybody can hear us. And then we will get rocking and rolling. We have Sophia is here. Hey, Sophia.
Hello, everybody.
Let me just turn this down. And we also have Patty. Have you been on with us before? I feel like you might have.
No, I have not.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. Thanks for joining us. You're the first time here. That's great. We're going to try to hear everybody's views, and it looks like Christy is also joining us here in the chat room. We got She-Wolf. I want to say hi to She-Wolf. I want to say hi to Pansy. Thank you both for joining in the chat room, and we'll try to keep this as interactive as possible between what we hear and see in the chat as opposed to what we hear and see on my screen right now. So I've got just about everything kind of pulled up. And do either of you have anything that you want to kind of start off with? We've got a whole list of different things to cover here. 10 people in the chat. Nice.
Did you want to cover any upcoming projects that we're planning?
Yeah, we're still working on the podcast. And Eric Spitfire Wilkinson has invited me back onto the show next Wednesday. So I'll be back on there, and I'll make sure to kind of talk about that too. I hope to have my book cover by then too, so that he can share that. But the goal, I think, is to do a once a month 2-hour podcast. And Sophia, I know, has been busy kind of spearheading that and making sure that we kind of got everything ready. She's created some titles that I haven't looked at yet, but we basically need 12 of them, one for each month, and hopefully maybe even kind of timed with things that happened during that month, because there is, going through a timeline of the David Crowley case, and what I have up right now is the main page for the Justice for David Crowley and Family Facebook group. One of the first thing that you should see is the timeline, Dan Hannon's timeline. I believe it's about 2 hours.
Expect me. Welcome to the resistance.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweigh the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it is in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts that they deserve to know. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. The centers are silent, not praised. No expenditure is questioned. No rumor is printed. No secret is revealed. No president should fear public scrutiny of his program. For from the scrutiny comes understanding. From that understanding comes support or opposition. And both are necessary. I am not asking your newspapers to support the administration, but I'm asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people. For I have complete confidence in the response and dedication of our citizens whenever they are fully informed. I not only could not stifle controversy among your readers, I welcome it. This administration intends to be candid about its errors. For as a wise man once said, an error does not become a mistake until you refuse to correct it. We intend to accept full responsibility for our errors, and we expect you to point them out when we miss them. The secret covenant. An illusion it will be, so large, so vast it will escape their perception. Those who will see it will be thought of as insane. We will create separate fronts to prevent them from seeing the connection between us. We will behave as if we are not connected to keep the illusion alive. Our goal will be accomplished one drop at a time, so as to never bring suspicion upon ourselves. This will also prevent them from seeing the changes as they occur. We will work together always and will remain bound by blood and secrecy. Death will come to he who speaks. We will keep the lifespan short and their minds weak while pretending to do the opposite. We will use our knowledge of science and technology in subtle ways so they will never see what is happening. We will use soft metals, aging accelerators, and sedatives in the food and water. And will also put in the air. They will be blanketed by poisons everywhere they turn. The poisons will be hidden in everything that surrounds them, in what they drink, eat, breathe, and wear. We will create medicine that will make them sicker and cause other diseases for which we will create yet more medicine. We will render them docile and weak before our power. Their minds will belong to us and they will do as we say. If they refuse, we shall find ways to implement mind-altering technology into their lives. We will use fear as a weapon. We will establish their governments and establish opposites within. We will own both sides. They will perform the labor for us and will prosper from their toil. Our families will never mix with theirs. Our blood must remain pure, for it is the way. We will make them kill each other when it suits us. We will keep them separated from the oneness by dogma and religion. We will control all aspects of their lives and tell them what to think and how. We will guide them kindly and gently, letting them think they are guiding themselves when they are not. We will guide them kindly and gently, letting them think they are guiding themselves when they are not. We will foment animosity between them through our factions. When a light shine down among them, we shall extinguish it by ridicule or death, whichever suits us best. We will make them rip each other's hearts apart and kill their own children. They will bathe in their own blood and kill their neighbors for as long as we see fit. We will benefit greatly from this, for they will not see us. For they cannot see us. We will continue to prosper from their wars and their deaths. We will make them live in fear. We will use all of their tools and all of our tools to accomplish this. The tools will be provided by the labor. We will make them hate themselves and their neighbors. We will always hide the divine truth from them, that we are all one. This they must never know. We will make them hate themselves and their neighbors. We will always hide the divine truth from them. They are all one. This they must never know. Drop by drop, drop by drop, we will advance our goal. We will take over their land, resources, and wealth to exercise total control over them. We will deceive them into accepting laws that will steal the little freedom they still have left. We will establish a money system that will imprison them forever, keeping them and their children in debt. When they shall band together, we shall accuse them of crimes and present a different story to the world, for we shall own all the media. When they shall rise up against us, we shall crush them like insects, for they are less than that. They will be helpless to do anything, for they will have no weapons. We will recruit some of their own to carry out our plan. We will promise them eternal life, and eternal life they will never have, for they are not of us. The truth will be hidden in their face, so close they will not be able to even focus on it until it's too late. Oh yes, as the grand illusion of freedom will be, that they will never have or never know. They are our slaves. When all is in place, the reality we will have created for them will own them. Their minds will be bound by their beliefs, the beliefs we have established from time immoral. But if they ever find out they are equal, we shall perish then. This they must never know. If they ever find out that together they can vanquish us, they will take action. They must never, ever find out what we have done. For if they do, we shall have no place to run. No one shall give us shelter. This is the secret covenant by which we shall live the rest of our present and future lives. For this reality will transcend many generations and lifespans. This covenant is sealed by blood, our blood. Ha 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 ha. None are more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe that they are free. You as an individual are so handicapped by coming face to face with a conspiracy, a monstrous conspiracy that no one can even believe it exists. The American mind simply has not come to the realization of the evil which has been introduced into our mindsets. Give me control of a nation's money supply. Give me the banks, and I care not who makes the laws. I am above them. We shall have world government, whether or not we like it. The only question is whether world government will be achieved by conquest or by consent. Welcome to the resistance. Peace.
So maybe just go through the synopsis again, if you would, about how this case came to be, and then go from there.
All right, sounds good. My name is Dan Hennon. I used to live 3 blocks from the residence there of that house where the triple homicide took place in a town called Apple Valley, Minnesota, just south of Minneapolis, St. Paul area of the Twin Cities. Now I live 30 minutes away, but have still followed the case now that this has happened back in January of 2015. The David Crowley was 29 years old, found with a gunshot wound to his head. His wife, 28, Comel, found with a gunshot wound to her head, and their 5-year-old daughter, Rani, gunshot wound to her head, also found dead there in that home. It's a Rambler style home. Homes are very close to each other. They had just moved in the December before, so they've been there a year. And when the police and authorities have gone in and looked into this investigation, they had ruled it that David, the husband and father, had shot his wife, shot his daughter, and then shot himself in some sort of strange ceremony with a musical playlist playing and a Quran on the floor, and there was blood writing on the wall that said Allah Akbar, and a notepad in the office that said submit to Allah. They had assumed that he had snapped and killed the family. He is a white Caucasian male. His wife come from a Muslim background, was born in Pakistan. They met in Dallas, Texas area, and she was attending Baylor University. They got married. It shouldn't have been anything to do with the Muslim background or David's Christian background, but the scene was staged to make it look like that, is what is my belief we get. And so now we're 4 years later. I created a Facebook group that folks can join on Facebook called Justice for David Crowley and Family. We now have 2,800 members. It's coming up on the 5-year anniversary of the bodies being found. And people are looking into this case and have been for quite some time, and it's just not adding up. Things don't make sense. David was not suicidal. The family was not going through any problems. David was following some controversial subjects on some of his thoughts and ideas on world events. Some have called him a conspiracy theorist, so I think police ran and went with that angle, thinking that he was just some nut job out there that believed in some wild, crazy things. He was working on a movie and a screenplay called The Gray State, which was going to be kind of a dystopian look into the future of where America is headed. And they assumed that he just got too involved with all this, shot and killed his wife, daughter, and then himself. And the local law enforcement looked into this case, wrapped it up very quickly, and called it a double homicide followed by a suicide. And David was just a nut job. The family was kind of all this was pushed under the rug and quickly wrapped up. But we've looked into this, and the things do not add up. And now we've got 4 years. Here we are sitting 5 years later. Greg Fernandez Jr., also on the call here, is coming out with a book, the first ever book on this case that goes over all of the various anomalies. Yep. And then what we've got too is a family had moved into that house. It had been on the market for a while because of this triple homicide, and a company came in and did major renovations to really get this house back on the market because of the folks did not want to. It wasn't really a good market, a home on the market with the history of this and all of the backlash. So they went through and basically redid the house top to bottom and re-gutted everything out. It actually looked very good. I went through it myself, and it was very good. A young family with young children were excited to move in. They did, and it was about a year or two later they moved out due to a job transfer, and so they were unable to stay there. Caused a lot of controversy as well, thinking, was there something in the house that forced them to move out? Was there something going on? Was it something with the neighbors? And I just personally believe it was a job transfer that led them out of there. I did talk to the owner several times on the phone, and she was very excited to be moving into that house with the kids. They wanted to have a fresh start, and they enjoyed the home. After going through it, they were looking forward to being in there and starting fresh, and to get rid of the stigma associated with that home. So that's the background of it. Greg is also on the phone. We've got some others here online too, and I think the chat room is open as well. But it's a very interesting case that has really a documentary was made on this book, on this story. A book is coming out. There has been a multitude of YouTube videos and chats that Greg and I both have done, and we were featured in this documentary called A Gray State by Eric Nelson that they did, that we were hoping would be a full, kind of a clean-cut documentary on what really happened in the ordeal of this case, but really it was set as a propaganda piece and published out there
Was it ever?
for the world to see. Basically walked lockstep in with the official police narrative of the Apple Valley Police Department and the Hennepin County Medical Examiner's report. It's all went lockstep, and everyone had the exact same case, that this was a nut job who did it, and the forensics that we have uncovered with Greg Fernandez's help and many others in the group have uncovered the forensics that actually proves otherwise. And so we've got some exciting news coming up here in the future.
It was declared a murder suicide wasn't it within a day?
They were handling it within the first 24 hours as a double homicide suicide already, is how they were treating the case, without any evidence, without any report testing. The actual investigation itself ended. The official investigation ended a year later, almost to the day they wrapped up, and it was a very strange report from the Apple Valley Police Department saying that they don't have a motive. They could not find a motive. There were several notes left behind that there was unable to, as far as the handwriting analysis, some of those things were never performed. Blood DNA from the forensics that came back a year later shows that some of the blood spatter in the house belonged to no one of the Crowley family. So there's another individual, unmatched and unnamed, that was in the house bleeding. And so the bullets and bullet casings didn't add up. There were various things that were missing. Hands were missing. The daughter's entire right arm was missing. The heads of the wife and husband were mainly gone, and the family dog was left behind, and police say that the dog was scavenging on the bodies for a 3-week period, basically accounting for all of the missing body parts. The body parts were not found at the scene. There were no body parts, limbs, or bones at the scene. Several small sporadic bone chips and smaller pieces in and on the living room floor, but we haven't found large bones anywhere, and the police chalked it up to the dog just scavenged and allegedly ate everything.
Looking at the crime scene photos, though, you had discovered, and I discovered it by watching some of the crime scene videos that you had analyzed, and there was a bag of dog food there. Now, the dog would have been able to would have known that was its food. It knows where its food comes from. It would have ripped through that bag to the dog food before it would start chewing on corpses. That's what anyone with 2 brain cells to rub together would assume. What's your take on that?
Yeah, the interesting thing, and that's a very good point as well, the first thing we did when we received from the FOIA requests all the data, the lab analysis, the forensics, the deaths certificates, and all the crime scene photos. Going through the crime scene photos, they took pictures, over 600 photos of every square inch of that house. One thing that came to mind that I noticed right away is that there was no sign of a dog bowl, water bowl, or a food bowl anywhere in that house. And so sometimes when looking at the crime scene photos, it's not only what you're looking at, but you're also looking at to what's not there. A dog, a family pet that they've had for this entire year living in that house, obviously would have had a dog bowl, water bowl, a food dish. There was none there. And so it's alleged that the perpetrators took that out and took that out of the way, took it out of the scene, so the dog would purposely scavenge on the bodies to make for a great story. But one of the photos does actually show 2 bags of dog food, 40-pound size of dog food, in that house. One is unopened, one bag is partially opened and rolled down, and it was certainly within reach of that dog. It was a 25-pound male beagle mix that, if starved for a 3-week period, could have certainly knocked over that bag, pulled it down, ripped it apart, gotten into that. But there's not so much of a scratch even on that bag, but allegedly the dog ate the bodies. Now there's also, like I said, with no water bowl, could a dog survive for 3 weeks with no water? Leads us to the next question. And there were 3 toilets in the house. One toilet lid seat was closed, one was open, and the water was essentially missing, which leads us to allude that the dog was drinking and did have a source of water. And the other toilet lid was up, but there was a stack of either a rolled up paper towels, a dirty diaper, or some kind of refuse in that toilet in the water bowl that the dog looks like didn't touch. So but all we have right now is potentially one toilet bowl that the dog was allegedly drinking out of to survive for 3 weeks, and that would, I would say, that would at least be plausible. But the dog food was right there, didn't get into that dog food.
Shaman,
Dan,
you want to fire away? Yep, go for it.
Yeah, Dan, and Greg, if you can answer this question too. There's been some debate amongst truth seekers or whoever's looking into this case on the whereabouts of, did anyone go to the house before the first responders, like the FBI or the investigation, took place? Because if the dog was inside the house, wouldn't you think the dog would have made a lot of noise of anybody attending the house? Like, the dog would know its perimeter. And if a stranger or somebody that they're not aware of, they will make a noise. Did that happen? Did any noise from the dog happen? Or was the dog laying down on the carpet waiting for someone to rock up? Because some dogs do that.
Go ahead, Greg.
Let me make sure I understand exactly what you're asking. Are you asking if people were there before the police came in?
Yeah. Did anybody
Yes.
turn up to the house? And
Yes.
did the dog make any noise at all?
Yes. So David's brother, his name is Dan Crowley Jr. He was at the house on December 28th. And even though the first media news stories said that he wasn't sure what day he was at the house, and they said probably the 26th or the 27th. But from what Dan told the cops, he was there on December 28th. He left a bunch of presents on their front step because he didn't want to cause any problems. There was some type of issue between him and David. So he goes there, he leaves a bunch of presents, $14,000 check. I don't know if he knew that there was a $14,000 check, but he leaves a bunch of stuff there. As he's doing that, he claims to see the dog through the front picture window. He doesn't go up to the front picture window or anything like that, but he sees the dog pop its head out, and that's basically it.
So the other, just to elaborate on that question, Jamie, is there the dog, from the neighbor's perspective, no one heard or saw the dog at all for this 3-week period. As I said before, the houses are pretty clustered together in this neighborhood. I've been there and went through that house and went through the neighborhood. It's very close together. The dog, I would assume, would have been barking and going off at some point in the time. raising, alerting the neighbors, but nothing. The brother stopped to drop off the gifts, like Greg said, and he said he didn't want to ring the doorbell, so he just left the gifts and just left. And the way out on the step through the front picture window, we did see the dog pop his head up, and then he took off. And so that him and his brother were not on speaking terms. They had gotten in some sort of fight in the previous August, and they weren't speaking to each other. But for the Christmas holidays, the father lives 45 minutes away. Dan Jr., the brother, offered to drop the gifts off for Christmas at the house on the way through, because David and Kamel were celebrating Christmas on their own. So because they were fighting, he didn't want to ring the doorbell or knock or make a big scene. He just left them at the front steps. But that was really the only incident of the dog either barking or being alerted. Gunshots ringing out. The evidence does show that these were .40 caliber handgun shots that were fired in that house, and police have shown that there was no silencer used. So that's the next suspicious thing, that were all these shots fired without the neighbors even being alerted either. And so it's as far as anyone noticing, no one, not even a neighbor, saw anything suspicious at the house. None of the family or friends made a welfare visit for 3 weeks, a welfare check on the family. And the school that little Ranny was going to school at the preschool, she missed an entire week of school after the Christmas break, and no one did a welfare check either. So that was the first thing that raised suspicion for a family of 3 that are well known in the community and very active, that not a single person did a welfare check on this family. And they were found by a neighbor that went in and looked up, and the dog jumped up and kind of startled them. They looked in through that picture window and saw bodies which they thought were mannequins at first. It looked like mannequins in that house because they were so they did not look like humans. And then that's when they placed the 911 call, and police came. First thing they found around back was the rear slider unlocked and slightly ajar, and that was never brought up, not even once in the police report or the evidence.
I was going to ask about that.
In the rear slider,
so
that was never even brought up. But that was very alarming. And we have to remember, this is January in the state of Minnesota, where the temperatures are below freezing, that the patio rear slider would not be much less it wouldn't be unlocked, much less open, and it was only open even a quarter of an inch. Not enough for the dog to get out, enough for cold air to come in, and certainly something wouldn't be a normal thing, and especially in January in Minnesota. But the strange thing was not that the fact that it was open, is that the police refused to address it or even bring that up. That would be your very first suspicion in a triple homicide like this, with a patio sliding door unlocked and slightly ajar. But they went on in quite great length with several paragraphs to mention that there was no forced entry in the beginning of the house and the front of the house.
The last time we went through this, we went through, we had to do 2 parts of 2 hours when we went through just reviewing some of the evidence photos.
3. We did 3.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you're not everything is fake and everything is a false flag, guys, right?
Right.
No,
never have been. I think I can say that. So this is just looking at it logically, evidence, fact-based, and there's a lot of holes in the story, tons, like Swiss cheese. What do you think, Damien?
That leads me to my next question. My first question is that if there was no dog bowls, if there was no water bowls, if there was no dog toys laying around, because people who have animals, they care about their animals. They have food bowls and water bowls, toys. I have 3 dogs, and there's stuff all over the place for the dogs. And that leads me to the question: was this even their dog? Did the neighbors know that they had a dog? Did they walk it? Did they?
That's interesting, though, Damien. Go back to what you said about, because same here. I have 2 dogs, and there's the whole freaking living room is full of toys. They're everywhere, on the couch, they're on the bed, they're everywhere, right? So I
Yeah,
never thought to look at the
Blake
amount
gets
of
into
maybe
beds
Dan and Greg, have you looked at it from that angle? That's one thing I guess I haven't looked at either. It's just another
Yeah,
hole in
there
that
are.
Swiss cheese.
Yeah, there are some dog toys. There are some of that. Everybody knew that they had a dog, and David took a lot of photos of the dog in that house.
The dog was very prevalent on their Instagram photos and Facebook, and the neighborhood all knew the dog. Him and his wife were both very active and healthy, and worked out quite a bit, and did cross training at CrossFit. And they took the dog out for many of the walks and runs and jogs. It was a younger dog, just a couple of years old, almost a pup. So lots of energy with that dog. There was toys and dog-related things in the house.
Sure, I'm just wondering if in the crime scene photos, if they matched up with what we had seen with David Crowley loving his dog and toys being everywhere. Because as we've seen in a lot of these crime scene photos that we've analyzed, things are moved around. They're in different rooms. There's things picked up, you know what I mean? So that's just an interesting angle, Damien. I never thought to look and compare that.
Yeah, I think David did consider the dog as part of the family, and so did Kamel, along with the daughter as well. They were very close to that dog, and it was very much part of the family. When the story first came out, it was alleged that the David was flipped out and was so angry that he shot his wife and daughter, and then there was bullet holes all around the house too, that he was attempting to shoot the dog as well. That was later proved not correct when those crime scene photos came out. There were no bullet holes everywhere in that house. There was a single shot fired into the floor that the cleaning company found that ended up in the basement, and that would be kind of odd for someone killing their wife and child and then themselves shooting a shot into the floor. Some of us suspected that was possibly a warning shot or something from the intruders or the perpetrators. But then there was also a shot into the ceiling, that a bullet was found in the attic. And so when you start doing the math on the bullets, it gets to be very strange, because there was only two really, or one essentially shot that David would have missed the dog if he was shooting. So then we go back into why was that narrative introduced that he was shooting at the dog? Who wanted that narrative in there? We know from his military background, David was in the military, was in the Army, was a very good shot, certainly would not have missed shooting his own dog. And so the question is, why were there extra shots fired in that house? Also, when we got back the forensics and the analysis, it shows that 3 of the bullet fragments, 3 bullets, had blood DNA from Kamel on them, which means she was not shot 1 time, but Kamel was shot 3 times. Rani was shot once, and there was no bullet at the scene at all that had David's blood, brain matter, or tissue in it at all. So there's no bullet. The bullet that killed David was never found. It was never accounted for. But there was a shot into the ceiling that they found David's DNA on it, touch DNA, that is. So no blood at all. Now, someone shooting themselves in the head would obviously have blood tissue. He also happened to use hollow point bullets, which explode and increase like a mushroom out when they're fired, and they hit and they impact the body and the skin and the brain matter and the tissue, and it's going to collect blood, hair, brain matter, and tissue all the way going through the body. And so police could not answer the fact that there's not a bullet with David's blood on it in that house. So the question is, how can you have a crime scene and close the books on a crime scene where there's allegedly this double homicide, but we also have overkill? Why was Kamel shot 3 times if he wanted to kill her? There was no shots needed. There was no additional shots. So now you've got overkill introduced. And so you've got a 5-year-old daughter's arm missing, and the autopsy comes back later that shows that the small rib bone under her armpit was fractured. And they thought, well, maybe she slipped and fell. Maybe she had a fractured rib. Well, some have speculated that maybe the arm was ripped off, and that broken bone, that fractured arm, That fractured rib under the armpit was caused by someone using their foot as leverage to yank that arm off. We still haven't found the arm. The dog wouldn't have eaten the radius and the ulna arm of a young child. May have chewed on it, but we still think that that bone is missing. Someone's got that bone, that entire arm, probably as a trophy, along with Kamel's both of her hands that were missing from the scene, and David's right hand missing from the scene. Now keep in mind he was right-handed, and the gun was laying inches away from his left hand, lying on the floor. So we've got problems and issues with this story from top to bottom.
Well, the fact that there's no bullet or any blood evidence from David would make one speculate that he wasn't in the house when he was killed. Correct?
Yeah, and that's another item as well. There's still speculation out there that these bodies were dumped. This was a dump site, and the family, all three of them, or even one of them, were killed in a secondary crime scene, and the bodies were all just found and discovered here. There was not really a lot of blood found in that living room on the floor where the bodies were found. Small amounts of blood, but not large pooling of blood at the scene at all. So that's still on the table too. Was this family killed elsewhere and left there? That is a very very good question.
Right, because if anyone who's seen any murder scenes will know that there are large amounts of blood that come out of the body when one is murdered, or shot, or stabbed, or anything, any kind of injuries. And it doesn't even have to be a murder. It can be just an attack. The body has copious amounts of blood, which spill out quite freely when something enters into the body and protrudes into it. So.
And that's a good point, if I can just interject here. The other forensics that we've had folks look into, the blood spatter in that living room, none of it is high velocity blood spatter. It's medium velocity. Medium velocity blood spatter comes as a result of someone wielding a hammer, a tire iron, some sort of object. High velocity with the gunshots only produce high velocity blood spatter. So if the official narrative is correct, there should be high velocity blood spatter all over that house. And there is blood spatter, but it's of a medium velocity, as if someone was beaten or killed there in that house with an instrument. Now, there was, I believe, gunshots that were used to potentially kill these folks, but we also see with the amount of damage left of that skull. There's a skull piece that turns out to be David Crowley's a portion of his skull that was there, and if you look in and zoom in, we've had folks with forensics background as well. It does look like there's blunt force trauma on a section of that skull, upwards of 12 to 13 indentations in David's skull that look like some sort of a tool was used at the scene. Now there's no tool found at the scene, but there's a smooth portion of your skull would not have indentations, almost looks like a hexagon type shapes in that, like some kind of a ratchet or something was used to beat this man. And
like a tire iron.
Yeah, tire iron, something to that effect. But once again, no neighbors heard yelling and screaming, or there's no there's no evidence of a struggle or a fight. Now that's not to mean that a torture could have taken place in that house if they were wrapped up, tied up, bandaged up, and tape across their mouth. You wouldn't hear anything anyway. But it still lends credence to those saying that there was a secondary crime scene, that all this would have taken place. Now the hands are missing. Who knows if the torturers here were pulling off fingers one at a time or chopping them off. We don't know, because the entire hand was missing. And so that's what we run into here, and we're stuck with some of these things that are not there. So we're only left with the evidence of the actual forensics that we have. Once again, the fingerprints, no fingerprints of David's on that gun. That was his gun. He owned it. It was registered. There should be fingerprints all over that handgun. But on the magazine, there's a spatter of blood that's got his blood on the magazine.
And guys, we're going to break.
Why would David Crowley be bleeding?
No.
Why would David Crowley be bleeding at all if he was committing this crime that way? Now, if he was tortured or something, I can see it. But we still have that DNA evidence, blood evidence of a party in that house that doesn't relate to David, Comel, or Ranny. All three of those are excluded. So we've got, from a police perspective, this is a huge case with many holes. And the average number of homicides in that city of Apple Valley is 1 per year. So it's not like they're well versed, these detectives, in dealing with something like this, much let alone a triple homicide of this magnitude. That the question is, were these guys just in over their heads or inept, or were they part of some sort of a cover-up? And that's where we're at now. The other thing that we've just found recently is the going in and looking at these photo forensics of the actual crime scene photos. There's four photos of David's skull laying partially on that book, the Quran, which I think is part of the staging. But if one looks at it, it's not that, it doesn't really jump out. But if you zoom in and look at that laying across, that skull piece laying across the page, we had a couple folks who put together a presentation that showed that where that skull bone was laying up the skull bone, you can see at the corner of the bone where the paragraph starts. And the next photo, there's you can read 2 or 3 words of that paragraph. The next photo, you can read 1 word of the paragraph where it starts using the same position, and the next one you can read 2. So they're not taking photographs of different
break in 15 seconds.
Different. Okay, from different angles. The photographs are not from different angles, but if you zoom in, you can actually see that bone piece was moved. So that's the next question. The BCA took those photos. Were they moving things around? Were they handling the evidence?
And with that, we'll see you back on the Sentinels of Truth in 2 and 2 after the break. If you guys could just mute out during the commercials, and we'll see you back at 2 and 2. Welcome to the Resistance. And we are back live on Revolution Radio, listener supported. Keep Truth Radio alive. Looks like YouTube is going by the wayside with the COPE Act coming into effect in January, and there's going to be millions of stations that are just freaking going to go up in smoke. People have worked for 10, 15 years on their stations, and your best bet is to back everything up on BitChute. Get a BitChute account. Anything that you've downloaded will be backed up because a lot of stations are going to be nuked, and that goes along with the censorship, right along with the David Crowley and the Gray State story, where this man was making a movie about a not too distant dystopian future of the United States, showing the monitoring, showing a lot of things that they didn't want you to see, and that's the evil Luciferian pedophilic Talmudic forces that have owned and still own the world right now, and they did not want this man's movie to come out, and all the people that were making the movie with him, close friends, people that he was in the military with, brothers, nobody's picked up the ball and ran with it and finished this film. And we have to wonder, we only get a short 2.5 minute clip of what it was about, but who knows what else could have been in that film that we didn't get to see in the trailer. You know, the geoengineering, chemtrails, if you will. There could have been all kinds of things that were in that movie that we didn't get to see in that clip. But what was exposed is that we're being watched constantly, and that we are marching towards a pretty dystopian future if something isn't done about it. Dan and Greg have no vested interest as far as having any friends or family involved, so they are from the outside looking in, taking an honest and open look at this case and what facts would stand up in court, which wouldn't, and what really happened to this man and his family. It is pretty disturbing that the friends just went ahead along with the narrative that this is what their brother in arms, this is what their closest comrade would do to himself, his wife, and his young daughter. That's the most interesting. Congrats, Greg, on writing the book, man. That's freaking awesome. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help. If you want to have some illustrations in there, I'll get in touch with David Dees, the artist, and that's so great to hear. And lastly, and then I'll let you guys start firing away with questions again. I was looking through some of the crime scene photos that we went through. We've been doing this a long time, folks. Dan and Greg and I and Jamie and Damien, and this is from 2016, guys. And I was looking through some of these. That's almost 4 years ago. Anywho, with the crime scene photos, I'm looking for, the tons of dog toys, and I'm not seeing them. And maybe that's a little overanalyzation considering all the proof. But like I said, I'm knee deep in toys when I go upstairs or in just about any room. With that being said, I will let Damien or Jamie fire away some more questions. These two are freaking Gray State Jedis.
Thank you, Eric. I just got a question here for either Dan or Greg. Now, going back to the house, you mentioned that it was renovated before the new family came in. At any stage, did they gather information that the FBI or the forensic analyst missed while they're doing the renovations before the family moved in?
Not to my, this is Dan, not to my knowledge that they didn't expose or find or discover anything in that house that would have been potentially missed from the crime scene investigation. They didn't unearth anything new as far as I am concerned. It would have been interesting to see from a personal perspective if those drain traps in the sinks and the toilet, the tub, the bathtub, and the sinks were ever redone. If there was any blood there, it did appear as if someone in the house perhaps washed their hands in one or two of the sinks, and we don't know what happened in that bathtub as well. There was a random hose, plastic hose in that downstairs bathtub, and the drain had the stopper in. The drain had the rubber stopper in it, but it was empty. So who knows what was in there? We can only assume that the Apple Valley Police detectives did not check or do any testing in the sink drain traps. There may have been blood. There may have been blood in them. Who knows? We don't know where all this blood went.
Yeah, because when a bullet was fired into the floorboard, surely they could have found some splinter of wood lying around that they didn't pick up.
Not that I'm aware of. There wasn't anything like that. For the newer listeners, when the professional cleaners came through, they were rolling up the carpeting and doing the cleaning and the vacuuming and the steam cleaning and everything else, and they lifted up one of the rugs in that main living room floor where the actual crime took place, and a bullet fragment dropped out of the bottom of the rug that was lodged in the carpet. So they found, the cleaners, the day or two later, found a bullet fragment. So even though police left with 3 that day, bullet fragments, and they just simply assumed that everyone was shot one time, case closed, problem solved, they found another one. And so now we find out that there was an extra bullet. And then a month later, they find a bullet in the attic, which is another bullet. So the number of times that the detectives had to return to the scene to collect evidence was 3 times. One was the day the bodies were collected. Once was 2 days later, when the cleaning crew found a bullet, and a month later when someone at the scene said that there was a bullet in the attic, and the police took a month to investigate that, finally got to it, and sure enough there was a bullet in the attic, and they said that was the one that killed David Crowley. Is now been labeled as evidence piece item exhibit 57, which we've gone into a multitude of shows on just that one bullet. How did it get there? Why was it there? Who fired it? When was it fired?
You're cutting out every 10 seconds at a time. You cut out for about 10 seconds.
I didn't hear that. I heard him pretty well, actually.
You did? Oh, so maybe it's on my end. Okay.
Now, Dan, wasn't there a bullet hole near the front doorway passage? I'm pretty sure when we went back to the crime scene photos, there was actually a bullet hole near the doorway and the front door. Is that correct?
That is relating to that infamous bullet. The entire crime scene took place in the front entryway in the living room, which is really when a person comes into the front door of the Crowley home and looks up while standing in the doorway, you would see a bullet. Allegedly, there are no crime scene photos of the 600 that entail that hole in the ceiling. Now, the members of David's team, the Gray State Project, that were working on this and who had the most to gain by the way of David's death, said that they couldn't believe police missed a bullet. All he had to do was look straight up, a bullet hole in the sheetrock in the ceiling. And this is just a 9-foot ceiling. It would have been right above their heads. There was documented 10 to 15 people in and out of that house, whether crime scene technicians, photographers, detectives, medical examiners, and even in the cleaning crew that came a couple days later. No one mentioned a hole in the ceiling, but later there was a hole in the ceiling. That's right above.
That means that it was done afterwards.
Well, we're just coming upon that investigation now, and that's just been proven here recently that hole, that bullet hole, was done after the crime was committed.
No kidding. That's fascinating. Having followed this case for so long, and just new evidence just continues to emerge. Is it possible to even convince someone in a position of authority to do anything about this? What's your belief about that?
And Greg may have an answer too, but I think that this case has been presented already to the county sheriff, to the Minnesota State Attorney General's office, and to the Apple Valley Police Department investigation unit to reopen it. They will refuse and have refused to reopen this case even after looking into the updated evidence. So we're trying to do shows like this to get the word out there. And because
well, they investigated themselves and they found no wrongdoing. I mean, just the way it goes.
Exactly. So you've got a cover-up within a cover-up, and even though we don't portray that the Apple Valley Police Department was in on the crime or the cover-up, they are certainly guilty of going into that crime scene and not seeing the hole, which I don't think was there. But one of their detectives said in going through, Detective Brian Bone did say that going through the photos after he was originally there, he did say that they didn't miss that bullet hole, and that hole was visible in several of the photos of the crime scene after looking at it later. You could see, he said, you could see them in a smaller portion of the photo. It wasn't zoomed in on the hole, but in the background you could see it. Well, that was blatantly false because there are no photos that exist. In fact, Greg Fernandez Jr. just got off an email with the lead detective just today confirming that there are no photos on the day the bodies were found of any hole in the ceiling. The only photos exist were after the crime and the bodies were taken out of that house. Now we have to keep in mind with the new listeners out there that neighbors did call 911 2 days after the bodies were found due to suspicious activity in that home. And squad cars did come. No one was in the house, but they said a pickup truck was in there, and there was a disturbance and suspicious activity in the house 2 days later. That's when I personally believe that shot was fired into the ceiling. I do believe the perpetrators had to account for that missing bullet for David and had to plant it into the scene later on. And that's why they had to tell the officers that they couldn't believe that the officers couldn't look straight up and see a missing bullet in the scene.
Oh, it looks like.
So it was added to the scene later. The police detectives came out there on February 18th, I believe. It was exactly a month later, and said, well, certainly enough, there is a hole. We must have just missed it. Well, that leaves them looking embarrassed, so they didn't want to elaborate too much on missing a crime scene of the actual bullet itself that killed the incriminating person who handled this whole thing, allegedly, according to the narrative, was David Crowley. Now they see the bullet climb into the attic and find a bullet remnant up there that's got David's DNA, touch DNA on that. And so he obviously would have been loading his cartridges and magazines. Not surprised that his DNA by touch was on all the bullets. But without brain matter, tissue, hair, or blood, they still closed the case that must have been the shot that killed David Crowley. And so what we've got is the Gray State team. Evidence comes out later where the people in that house when that 911 call was made to authorities. But they were never investigated and looked into or given statements.
You would assume that the people who perpetrated this would be of great significance and have a very high amount of pull within any law enforcement community, and that if this was perpetrated by government agency that that they would be able to make calls and put pressure on people to keep it quiet, if you will, because of the nature of the movie that that he was producing at the time. It seems to me that that anything involved in this case would be pursuant to all of these things that I'm saying, such as, okay, people high up in the government who don't want us to know that the gray state exists, and that
There'd be a lot of levels of people wanting to cover this up, I think, is what you're saying.
yeah, yeah,
ways.
it's an Orwellian nightmare is what it really is.
Along
And-
those lines, how receptive has the Apple Valley Police Department or the Sheriff's Department, or I believe you said there was another petition or request you had out there, when we're talking about getting any real answers to this story, Greg? Have they been receptive to you guys, or they've been like, these are the conspiracy nut guys who were shedding a bad light in that mini documentary?
Kind of both. I would say kind of both. It's all about how you phrase it. It's all about how you talk to them. If you talk to them with respect, from what I've found, they pretty much will give that back to you. They tried to, they obviously don't want to talk to us. They don't want to spend any time on it. But if you ask them certain real questions, from my experience, they will answer you.
But you have to ask the right questions, right?
Correct. And you have to phrase it in a certain way, and you have to be very, very patient. And I think that our patience is really paying off now, because we're getting very, very close to where either they're going to have to show that there is a photo of a bullet hole in the ceiling that was found when the bodies were found, or they're going to have to say that there isn't. Once they're forced to do that, I think that's where, for me, that's going to be a big turning point, because up until now, it's always been, well, we have these photos, we can't see that bullet hole. They're saying that they have a photo that shows that bullet hole. Why don't we have it? It's that simple. And if we had it, if they would have given it to us, we wouldn't even be here talking about this. I would have the answer, and we'd be able to just kind of move on. I don't know if they're stalling. I don't know if they really don't know. But whatever the answer is, I'm hoping this will help us get the case reopened. This, to me, is the smoking gun. I know Catherine, one of our other fellow researchers, for her, the smoking gun is blunt force trauma on that skull, which, if anyone hasn't looked at that, Dan has talked about that, man, you have to look at that, because I was a doubter, and slowly but surely my views on that are changing. But for me, that bullet hole in the living room ceiling is the smoking gun. There's no way that they should have missed it. Everybody missed it. How is that possible?
Yeah, along those lines,
especially with a forensics team that's trained to do things like.
Exactly. That's what I was about to say, is that you're talking about quote unquote amateurs who are catching all these things. You have to know that some of these officers know, just because of the nature of their job, and they're just, it's a long time ago in their eyes, and you know what I mean. They're just kind of looking the other way.
Right.
Well, look, I could get my mother-in-law to do this, and she would spot every single thing, because all of us have watched shows on murder and all of these things. Like, it's been on for eons now. They show you all the things to look for within these scenes. So for
not there though, they weren't trained to look up.
Yeah. Well,
a qualified forensics team to miss this is absolutely stupendous.
Yeah, exactly. And this leads to the question to either Dan or Greg. You guys been getting a lot of heat with the investigation that you've been doing. However, has anyone had come onto your show or your channel to debate you and try to debunk everything that you have put out to the audience?
If they show up.
Yeah,
Am I right, guys?
They've never showed up. Never showed up. So I'm still waiting. I'm still,
10-0.
10-0. That's right.
And
I'll always be 10.
And it's been about, what, 5 years now? 4 or 5 years now since it's happened?
Yep, almost 5 years.
And if you would ask these two, if you would ask the opinion of, as they were saying, the way they go about this, the way they speak, with mutual respect about this, that these guys are in any way, shape, or form here for nefarious reasons, it'd just be silly. I mean, they're here to get to the bottom of this and get to the truth. They saw something that was a complete travesty, along with the fact that this movie it's pretty much featuring what's going on currently. It's just not quite ramped up to that level of boots on the neck, but it could get there soon.
And for the new listeners who's just getting the tailwind of this whole Grey State Dave Crowley investigation, I just want either Greg or Dan to ask this: is why do you think these people do not want to show up or to debate you in the evidence that you have?
Because they will lose. Because by them showing up, they lose. Because they already know that they cannot prove that David Crowley is guilty. By that simple fact, I have already won, because I've already proven that nobody can prove that David Crowley is guilty. By the simple fact that nobody can. So they've already lost. So for them to even show up would be to lose. And they're stupid, but they're not that stupid.
Why would his closest friends turn it down, especially with two respectful guys? You know what I mean? Why would they turn it down? An opportunity to learn. Maybe his buddy was murdered. Maybe his buddy, their brother, their combat brother, was taken out rather than went down. That's very interesting.
Well, and then you have to look at it from the point of view that if they delve into this, being members of the military and knowing, okay, I've worked very closely with military personnel in the past, so and they do know things that are going on within the world. Okay, they do. They know that the gray state exists.
Well, they're usually the most awake people that we interview, period, are people that are in the military. They're the most awake. They're also...
they're in the know. They know what's going to happen because they've been informed of it. So for them to come forward and question something that they know could be fact would be absolutely...
Along those lines, guys, have you had any success with somebody maybe in the police agency or in the sheriff's department, or what was the other method you were talking about using, Greg, to get answers? There's a third one, a petition or a request to someone.
We have some members in our group that have taken that route, and I think they have up to 2,000 people that have signed, and we could probably get that to 500,000.
Where is that?
I really think.
Where is that?
So if you Google "I petitions" and then add David Crowley to that, or maybe not Google, DuckDuckGo it, whatever, but search for it. If you search for that, it will come up, and people can sign up now. But I mean, we need to do everything. We need to do anything. This is such a simple slam dunk case. The alternative media had a great opportunity to take this case and get a victory, to put a V in the column. We have so many losses. We have so many things that we are continually fighting for, that we are continually losing because we don't have enough brave people to stand up and just say, no, there's something not right here. We have many people doing it for many different things, and they will continue to. But for this case, it is such a simple slam dunk case. I don't understand why more people have not gotten involved. The only thing that makes sense is because they have not heard of this case yet. That makes sense to me. But once you have, that line is drawn. And, you know, we're not saying you need to go out there and save the whole freaking world or anything like that. But at the very least, let other people know. Because this is a very simple case of where you have the Apple Valley Police saying that David Crowley is guilty, and it's very clear that they cannot prove their case. But yet every media, all of the mainstream media, all of those people that covered it, all of the same cast of characters, and the people that worked with David, they're all saying that he's guilty, and they know that he's not. They know it can't be proven. So what are they doing? How big is this? How deep does this rabbit hole go?
And because I have you guys on here tonight, and we're allowed to talk about this on Revolution Radio, the only rules they have is no swearing, which has actually helped a lot as far as professionalism. Really, it has, because using too much language is a substitute for intelligence. And you guys have always been respectful and honorable. And I think that it is possible to get some truth out of this. The thing is, while I have you on here, we are allowed to speak about that old sandbox place, which is pretty much, we've just been censored and pounded and taken down, and strikes on the other one for videos that I may have made years ago. So because I have you two on, and I know you're familiar with that case too, and it'd probably be nice for you two to be able to speak on that also freely, because if you look, I mean, they're all gone. Anything about Wolfgang Helbig, gone. Sandy Hook videos struck immediately. You're not even allowed to express an opinion about that anymore. I had to put my remaining videos on screen, on private, in order to make sure my station wasn't nuked. That's the level of censorship we're at right now. And yeah, let's talk a little bit about Sandy Hook. I can actually say that word on here without getting a strike. Honestly, that's how bad it's gotten, and it's insane that it's gotten to that level. What do you think about that, Dan?
Well, with Sandy Hook, I spent some extensive time on that case as well, and that was very similar to this. You get the people the doubters that say, well, that just couldn't have happened, or I don't believe that could have happened. But if you sit and you look at the evidence, much like the Crowley case, all you got to focus is on the evidence and what was there and what wasn't. And a lot of these cases like this, there's so many mistakes that were made. You know, the Sandy Hook was Adam Lanza allegedly went in and shot up the school, but then it was with a .223 Bushmaster rifle, but then they find that in the trunk later on national television when they go into the trunk of the car and they pull it out, which means that he didn't have it with him in the school. There are errors like that that are made. When you look at the autopsy report, in Adam Lanza's case, there's a gunshot behind the ear in the back of his head, is how Adam Lanza died. Well, if he was to shoot himself, would it be behind the ear in the back of the head? And
no way.
So these are the things that don't come out in the mainstream media, but the cars pulled up to that elementary school with the Honda four-door. All four doors are opened, but the evidence shows that all the doors were closed. The evidence shows that all four were open, which means other people got in and got out of that car. A multitude of people, were in there. Whether or not a shooting took place there at the school, I don't know, but it certainly wasn't Adam Lanza. Death certificate shows he died the day before the shootings, in his own house.
How about the signs outside of the school that said that this was the staging area and
everybody must check in?
James Fester just got sued for that. I believe it was, what was it? I think it was it 500,000 or 50,000? It was some ridiculous amount. Did you guys see this? For claiming that birth certificate was forged.
Yeah, they're claiming that now, and in fact that that birth certificate, when I was in the process of asking for that too on genealogy.com and the SSID, the Social Security Death Index, that did come back with the December 13th date on it. And we all know the shooting was December 14th. In fact, that anniversary is coming up, but mistakes were made, and that's what you kind of have to focus on some of these things, and don't let the conspiracy stuff derail you. His wife, his mother, I think Adam's mother was Nancy. I do not believe they were ever at any hunting range and shooting ranges and things like that, but she was killed in that house. The question is, who killed Nancy Lanza? That's what you need to focus on. It was not Adam. He was dead the day before. Who killed Nancy? It's things like that. It's the financials. It's the Peter Lanza who was paying $240,000 a year in alimony to his wife Nancy because she was raising Adam, who couldn't fend for himself, and that was not some kind of short-term child payment arrangement that would end when he hits 18 years old. That was to go on forever. And
yeah, that's alimony. That's it's not child support.
It was an alimony. So Peter's new wife certainly did not take kindly to that, and I'm sure she wanted that gone, that monthly payment. That's $250,000 a year that she could be having access to along with Peter, and the only way to get rid of that is to possibly kill the wife and whatnot. So if there was speculation that he was sniffing around looking for someone to take her out, the government got a hold of that in special ops and says, how about we tie this into a false flag, everybody wins, but then later we'll kill your son at the same time. What's Peter going to say then? Oops, you didn't tell me that killing Adam was going to be part of it. I thought it was supposed to be a small little hit. And now they wrap it up and ensnare him into a whole 26-student elementary school shooting. And then you wonder why Peter Lanza is not making statements on national TV, wondering what the hell's going on. He's found himself embedded into the orchestrated event that he had nothing to do with. But now he's in it. So he doesn't have his payment anymore, but you don't see these guys yelling from the rooftops saying, what is going on here?
What really opened a lot of people's eyes was the Robbie Parker coming out and laughing and smiling and all in great spirits less than 24 hours after his daughter.
And then turning around and acting like he's crying.
That opened a lot of people's eyes, but what really opened mine way back was Wolfgang Helbig and the amount of interviews I've done with him, and the fact that he comes from a background of Wolfgang Helbig was director of school safety for the entire country at one point. He's a former state trooper. He's an all-around good guy, and on top of it, his wife believes Sandy Hook happened. So he's got no vested interest in going against this, and all he did was come to that city to ask questions as a professional. And he was originally donating to Sandy Hook, and they threw him out, ran him out of there like he was a bank robber. And he said something's not right here, and that's the only reason he started looking into it. And this man dragged through the mud, frickin' beat down so many times for trying to do the right thing. He actually won his last court case against Lenny Posner. We can even use that name now, Penny Losner. I'm so used to saying it that way because we're not allowed to say it on YouTube. But he actually, I regressed, but he actually didn't show up for the court case. So that was a big win too. But that kind of got overshadowed by the big Alex Jones, where he broke everybody's hearts that ever had followed him for so long with those interviews where he was getting sued for since when are we sued or are put in prison for our First Amendment right, for our right to speak our opinion? When did it become this way, guys?
It happened when the gray state actually started. And here's the fact. One Am I back?
Yes.
Okay. The whole fact of the matter is that Sandy Hook wasn't even in operation at the time that this all happened. And I spoke with Wolfgang at length about all of this. And I still have his personal number. But the fact is that that Sandy Hook was no longer in operation. It wasn't a running school anymore, and so it
And those
and
were the biggies, Damien. The fact there was no internet usage for
and
years
the whole town,
leading up to it.
the whole
Just
the
things
whole
like that.
town, the whole town is a and this is not the only town. That is not the only town in the U.S. that's like federally. It's a federally run town.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
I've been to a few towns
It's
across
a government
the US.
agency unto itself.
The town is government run. Period. 100%. Everyone in that town works for the government. They work for the FBI or the CIA or some government agency. And I've been to a few towns when I was walking across the U.S. where that was the case. And you'd talk to people that lived in the town that were not indicative of that, and they were like, "Oh, you don't want to talk about anything here because you don't understand what this town is, right?" So it's
like that. It's like freaking Rambo, dude. You walking into town and you're like, okay, I didn't do anything wrong though, and they're well, here you go. We're gonna go ahead and take you to the border. Have a nice day.
There are towns in the United States
I love that movie.
that are completely
That's what happened to Damien, pretty much.
Agencies, completely run by government agencies. So if you speak about anything outside of the realm of normalcy, then you may not walk out
Rambo.
of town.
Interesting, Greg.
No, I was just saying, and that's why we need more Rambos in that situation.
And Wolfgang has done a good job. This is Dan again, because he sticks to the facts, and with his background, he can zoom in on these photos. And I think he was part of that group that even noticed that parking lot, the lining, the paint lines for the parking stalls.
You know, it was even more than that one.
There was no handicap
the
stalls.
handicap parking signage. They need to be a certain height. There was none. None. There's aerial shots of this. None. Now, how can that be? How can there be no parking signage?
Yeah, and then if you look into he does very good with the evidence of those types of things and doesn't get into the other rigmarole. But they use that Lenny Posner once again. He's then been the kind of the focal point of going after all these people as the alleged good guy, but he's about as rotten as they come. This person characterizing himself as Lenny Posner. But even the photographs that they have, the iconic photographs of the children being let out of the school that have been looked at and scrutinized as well, that took place more than likely during a fire drill.
The same 15 that are paraded around in the same pictures.
And you get the kids in the wrong. The kids in the wrong order as various takes were cut. Some of the kids are in the front, and the same kid up in the next photo, he's in the back, and the parents are standing there. They're watching, and that looks like a fall day to me, not a December cold, wet, rainy day that the actual shooting did take place on. These photos are people in shirt sleeves, and leaves are on the ground. That obviously was portrayed and used an actual photo of kids evacuating the school as part of what I personally think of was a fire drill test that was done at that school, just for the purpose of having the media there to take photos of it, then to be used later on December 14th, saying here's actual footage coming out on CNN of the children being let out of a school shooting. So the fakery is very good. The fakery is very good on these things. But they're dealing with emotions, and that's the thing that they can get you on, because who's going to argue with a elementary school shooting where children were killed You just don't go there. It's one of those things you don't go there. So that's why I think they do these on purpose and touch these taboo subjects, because no one's willing to. You're going to look like a nutcase if you are going to stand up. And that's what Greg and I have faced on the Crowley case. They're saying that, he was nuts. He had post-traumatic stress syndrome. He was drinking. He was doing drugs. He was smoking weed. Comel was hallucinating. So they come up with all these other points that very well could be true, but they're not evidence pointing to why this happened or what happened. It's all just hearsay. And so that's what we're dealing with. That's what Greg and I are dealing with these people wanting to debate and wanting to do things like that and come on the show. Then they chicken out at the last minute. They don't want to do it because they're just talking about opinion. I just got another.
You're dealing with facts, which Wolfgang had always said that to me too. He said, okay, the Robbie Parker thing, still that's not a fact. You don't have fact. Stick with the facts. Stick with the parking signage. Stick with the fact that there was mold growing everywhere. I mean, just stick with the facts. There was no internet usage. Stick with the facts. Stick with how long it took for the trauma helicopter.
I've done with
my facts, there were porta potties there before there were trauma helicopters. Stick with the facts. That's when you'll get somewhere.
And what I've presented with some of my work with Wolfgang Helbig too was coming from getting the Board of Education financial records, the meeting, the monthly minutes, and the long-range plan, the budget. And if you look on the 5-year plan before that school, there was plans earlier on in that decade to refurbish and do maintenance at that Sandy Hook school. All of a sudden, in 2011 and 2012, before this alleged shooting took place, you see those estimates and projections for amounts needed to maintain that school dropping to zero at Sandy Hook. Zero for maintenance and repairs budget for the year 2012 and 2011. Why would their maintenance and repairs go down to nothing on a school that old that needs all those things? It's things like that you've got to look at from an evidence that they knew they were getting a new elementary school. They didn't want to put the money into to budget for it. So why not have a shooting and have the funds raised, build you a $25 million school in exchange, and now your community just doesn't have to spend a dime. That's what they got out of the deal. The brand new elementary school, which was part of the plan to begin with, I believe.
Yeah. Well, here's a funny story, guys. Anytime when there is a alleged mass shooting that occurs in America, Jamie here gets heat because I'm in Australia. We've got gun control. Every time there's an alleged shooting going on in America, I get them coming out of the freaking woodworks.
Well, yeah, you're one of the greatest false flags that most Americans don't know about, the Port Arthur massacre.
Well, man, we got to do an episode on Port Arthur, because
Dan and Greg, are you familiar with that?
Was that the mass shooting that caused the rules to change, or the amendment?
Back in 1996.
That was the perfect play, and they've been using that playbook here in America, trying to get the same thing to happen, and it isn't working. But
exactly.
It was fantastic there in Australia.
Exactly,
right. We have the Second Amendment, and that won't work because we're not going to give our guns up.
Yeah, well, see, whether you've got an amendment or not, it's not going to work. You know what I mean? But the thing is, the point that I'm making is, every time when there's a alleged shooting that goes on in America, they come out of the freaking woodwork and personally attack me. I'm telling you, I did not agree with the gun law here in Australia, and I still don't. It hasn't worked then, it's not working now. Do you really think if America implicate what Australia does, you think it's going to work? Not on your freaking life, it's going to work. So, guys, please leave me alone. Right? I'm not an advocate for anything. I'm just trying to get the truth out there for people to get educated. You can't take a gun to you can't take a knife to a gunfight.
Well, you can't. Won't win usually. And you just have burning out of control all over the place in Australia. A lot of people, they talk about California, but your whole country's on fire right now, isn't it?
Well, here's the thing.
The whole east of the country. Yeah.
Here's the thing. Many Americans and many people around the world think Australia cannot own guns. It's a lot of crap. You can own a gun. You just can't own a semi-automatic or a fully automatic weapon. right? If I want to go out hunting, like real kangaroo shooting or pig shooting, I've got to be licensed gamer or a hunter to go out and shoot. And all you'd be using is a 22 caliber or an air rifle.
Yeah, they get tanks, you get muskets. You take what you're given.
let me let you in on something, okay? Anything that you can repeatedly shoot, like a 22 pistol, a 38, a 45, whatever, that is a semi-automatic. I don't care what they say. Anytime you can pull the trigger and shoot a bullet, that is a semi-automatic.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter what they say.
That's true.
So
He's actually wants to bring
so-
up Sandy, by the way, man, because it's got me all fired up now. I've been pretty calm
but-
for
no,
months
but-
now, but haven't
but-
been able to
but-
talk about it. I think some of us
but
feel
you
like we're
can't-
just going to bust inside if we don't continue to be able to speak about this, and that'll come on other platforms. I'm certainly that Twitch,
It
Gas,
absolutely
other ones
will.
are
So
slow.
anytime you can pull the trigger and shoot a bullet, that's a semi-automatic. My 38 is a pistol.
can't-
It's a semi-automatic.
And like I'm saying, Damien, you can own a freaking 22. You can own it. It's legal to buy it here in Australia. So I don't know what the argument is. Oh, you can't buy guns in Australia. It's a lot of crock. You
Well,
can
pretty
go
soon
down.
censor shows where we're able to even, like, again, Revolution Radio right here. It's listener supported. You can come here. We can speak about anything as long as we don't swear, and we can even use like words like ass and stuff on TV shows these days. I cannot believe it's like they can say that now. Oh my goodness! Still not
Right.
sure,
Right?
but it's listener support. It's like $6, $6 a month to archive all the shows on here, which are there's James Fetzer's on here, Kevin Barrett's on here. There's lots of great stations on here to go to, and Truth will be moving over here for more shows because of the inevitable collapse of YouTube that's coming.
Oh, it's coming too. They're planning to.
What do you guys take on that,
planning-
Gregor Dam?
I don't think anything will happen with YouTube. That's just my opinion. I do believe that it's corrupt. You have to look at who's running these companies: Google, YouTube, Twitter, and 23andMe. These all connected to the same folks running these things. I don't think anything's going to take taken on YouTube, but I don't know.
Heard of the COPE Act yet? It's going into
23andMe. Is that
we just got a whole bunch of information that blew our freaking heads off.
Ooh, I'm telling.
Have you heard
Revolution Radio?
Dan, have you heard of
that.
the COPE Act? I'm going to share it with you in here if you have it not. Share Max Egan. The COPE Act.
Max Egan's awesome too.
Have you heard of it, Dan?
No, I haven't.
No, okay. I'm going to share it with you. It's pretty mind blowing. What's gonna happen? And we did a show about it. I think it was last week actually. If you go to Spitfire Sentinel YouTube channel, it's at the top, and Max Egan speaks for about 17 minutes about the implications of it. And it looks like there's going to be millions of YouTube channels nuked simultaneously with this COPE Act.
Well, go ahead, and I'll make another one.
I dropped the
It's okay.
punch bowl. Friggin' Spitfire. Greg, have you heard of the COPE Act?
No, I haven't. But I have been hearing about there's a new. I think it was yesterday. There was a new rule. There was something that happened on YouTube where you have to set your kid settings. It has something to do with
of course they disguise it underneath for the kids. Of course,
Right.
That's how it
So
works.
it's
You already
like-
have parental settings on there where you can
But
mark
can
it
you-
for adults.
Right, but maybe so I was thinking, well, maybe that's what they're talking about, where it's like, okay, if you don't have that setting, then they can give you a strike, and let's say you have 700 videos, boom. I mean, really, you expect me to go through 700 videos and to change one setting, and but I don't know, but so I've been
the
backing
videos
everything.
also, they're copying and hidden that anything that's not user friendly. Certain videos you might play along with here, so perhaps maybe some of us can squeeze by with just radio. But as far as the visuals and the videos. Everything's going to change January 1st, and I'll share this link with you.
That was supposed to be December 10th.
Right. That was just a new rule. There were some new things for that, but I haven't heard anything else other than that.
I'm backing everything up on just in case, and I urge everyone, including yourselves, who have done work over the back up your stations with BitChute.
Well, there's no way I could go through the past 5 years of videos and put every one of them on a setting. There's just no way I can do that.
Well, they just went through a gigantic purge not too long ago, like 6 months ago, a whole bunch of stations, and they're going to continue to do that. Just start and continue. Because again, as Dan said, who owns everything? I mean, Google owns YouTube. What do you think they're going to do? They got 6s in their name. No, that's a conspiracy. What do you think they're going to do?
It's not a conspiracy theory, though. It is conspiracy. You're right.
But yeah, this Copac thing is and we did a show on it last week, and you guys can check out a little bit of it at your leisure. Especially check out what Max had to say about it. We got about 7 minutes left, 6-7 minutes left. Greg, Dan, what do you want to close out with? Probably back to David Crowley and Gray State. Didn't it feel good though to stretch out and be able to talk about Sandy Hook again?
Oh yeah, Sandy
that was
Hook's
nice because
a jackpot. It's never ending. Never so many tentacles on that. It is unbelievable.
Definitely, I've been waiting to talk with Dan about that for a long time, so it was good. I really enjoyed
we've
it.
been wanting to do some shows on that topic, but we've been stuck on the Crowley case. And one thing, this Crowley case is that thing would be taking 5 years, 5 years of our lives to be wrapping this up, and now we're coming up upon the anniversary. But once again, with the business, and you got to look into the evidence, like we talked about before with Sandy Hook, in this David Crowley case. David Crowley had a $30 million contract from Hollywood to move forward with this movie. Now, it was in works to turn it into either a web-based series or a TV series or a Netflix series or something to that effect, but they were going through the motions of ironing that thing out. But what happens after David Crowley is savagely killed? It's a few months later, his top cast character is Danny August Mason, starts up a new company in the state of Minnesota with the Secretary of State called Gray State Universe LLC, and starts getting some trademark applications done and some copyright applications done. It looks like he's moving forward with the company. But when asked about his connection by the police to David Crowley in the Gray State, Danny August Mason is on record by saying, "I'm nothing more than an actor in the film. I don't have a business relationship with him." One of the things that Gray State was, those guys were co-founders of this whole project. Danny August Mason certainly had a vested interest and was a business partner of David's at the business level. And one of the things that David needed to move forward with to get this project going is a legal separation from Danny August Mason from his lawyers to say he's no longer connected or legally bound to this from a business standpoint. Danny August Mason refused to sign that letter. We've got the emails going back and forth from David Crowley's inbox that show that he was trying to get that done and trying to move that forward in the month of October of 2014, November of 2014, and then finally the last straw was December 16th of the year 2014. David says, "I'm moving on without you regardless, if you sign that off or not." And a week later, the bodies were potentially killed. So Danny August Mason started up the company months after, refused to sign off his separation from a legal standpoint, but yet goes on to tell the Apple Valley Police Department that he's nothing more than an actor in a project. He has not got no connection from a business standpoint. So why are these folks lying is the real question. Why are they lying when they tell us on our Facebook page that there was no contract, there was no $30 million deal? And
there absolutely had to be a contract if they were going to do a film. There
Correct.
had to be a contact.
And so we know that there was, but people did not like it. So what did I do? I contacted the president of Michael Entertainment Group in California, and I did an interview with him directly and recorded it. He says that there was a contract. They were moving forward. David was excited about the deal, and it was a big production that they were working on. Never, ever did the contract cease or end, or did David want a separation from the deal. He was actively working toward 2015 when all this was going to come to fruition. And so once you get the evidence and things like that out there on broadcasts, on video, on audio, those are things that we can present and have pushed towards, for instance, with the Minnesota State Attorneys General to get this thing opened up. There are so many lies in this case that part of this petition also with all these signatures is to get something like this reopened and eyes on this case to expose the lies and the mistruths.
That was well said. And in the chat room, I see Jer Barrett said Dr. Fetzer was shut down in court. Yep, sued for almost $500,000, so it was $500,000 for looking into and trying to claim that birth certificate was fake. Isn't that interesting? Yep, that's and also Jer Barrett is talking about how David Crowley, the stuff he was exposing, was the Sandy Hook ideology. What we're seeing here right now is being silenced from even being able to speak about this subject. You see, it's just been a gigantic, again, purge off of YouTube, where you aren't even allowed to talk about it. And the way we've been vilified, I know that Dan and I were. Greg, were you there too? I think you were too. But Dan and I were in the Sandy Hook exposed group that got nuked. You're not allowed to talk about it, and everyone was always really respectful in there, just looking for facts. A lot of attacks in there, but now we're not even allowed to talk about it. So you could say that Facebook's gone that way too. We've been talking about the death of the Second Amendment coming up, First Amendment, and the Second Amendment will die, and then the First will die next because the second card's the first. But I regressed. As far as being able to speak about these things, you two would be great on this station here too. Again, listener supported, going out to potentially 1 million people across 3 states in the Midwest, and YouTube's going to go to the wayside after you watch this video. I think you two are going to be pretty blown away. Again, thank you to everybody in the chat room. You've been completely awesome. Let me see if I missed any questions in here. Always great to have Dan and Greg on. Dan Hennon, not to be confused with Dan Henneman. Greg
He's
on,
been called worse. Don't worry.
Still digging for truth. Damian and Jamie Maynard. Damian Maynard and Jamie McNichol. You've been called worse. Thank you for being here as always, fellow Sentinels. And we will see you back next week. Same place, same time, right here. Revolution Radio. Let's get you guys back on soon. And if you're interested about getting on maybe a show or two on Revolution Radio, I'd be more than happy to hook you guys up with the right folk.
Nice. Absolutely.
Awesome. Excellent.
Thanks again for standing for true justice and the human way. Welcome to the resistance. Peace. And then, unfortunately, we got to hang right up because then the next show comes on and the commercial comes on. It was great having you two on. Thanks again, guys.
See you guys.
Yeah, thank you,
Thanks,
you
guys.
guys.
Thank you,
Appreciate
guys.
it.
Real people, real radio. Wherever you are, make it TFR. The Truth Frequency Radio. This is Truth Frequency Radio.
The wicked ones obviously under heavy Masonic influence. The Rundown, Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Check out therundownlive.com. Mike P. Kristan H. The Rundown, Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Check out therundownlive.com.
What up, guys? We are live here. It is Monday, January 19th, live here on the Rundown Live, RealRadio.com. Mike Pachesney, Kristan Harris. And we're celebrating freedom today, right? Because it's MLK Day, and when you have somebody good for freedom, they just end up assassinated, and then you have a government holiday.
Well, that's just it. It seems like whenever people speak out or they do things that point out the hypocrisy in the system, people end up dead, Mike. We haven't seen that with Ron Paul, but he's pretty high profile, and there's still a lot of good people in government that maybe protect somebody like a Ron Paul.
We're not going to be be talking about MLK today.
No.
We know what he did, and we know what happened.
And he did a lot of good things, but he ended up dead.
Ended up dead, exactly. And he'd still probably be fighting today if he was around. That's why they had to get rid of him.
I definitely don't think he'd associate with the current establishment, both conservative or liberal. That's for sure.
And like Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton.
I don't think he would like either of those guys.
Nancy Pelosi, Pope Pelosi. You don't think they're friends?
Well, no. He preached against the police state and a non-aggression principle. Remember, he warned about the police state and government being the policemen of the world. Remember? And then he said that God will give the nation to a country that does not know his name, and he'll break the back of America. That was a Martin Luther King. I don't know if that's verbatim quote, but it's kind of a...
To me?
That's what's happening. Is China getting all the roads and jobs? So
it's because we've had some interesting news over the weekend.
Sad news, depressing news.
Yeah, it's interesting and not good. So we need to go there. A friend is now passed, and there's some bad news surrounding this. David Crowley from the Gray State movie, the writer and director, and now his family have been found dead in their home. So we're gonna have to talk about it. We got to talk about this because
that's a sad topic.
Of ours, and we have to talk about what happened here because I wouldn't want this to be anyone else I know or my family or so we have to talk about it. So that being said, open lines today if you guys want to get in the convo, 866-37-TRUTH, or you can call us locally, 414-455-4333, but we'll open up the lines for you. And then Kristan, if you want to get into the site real quick.
Yeah, guys, if you guys haven't had a chance to yet, get in front of your computer, tablet, or cell phone and type therundownlive.com into your browser. It'll take you to our website. There, you're going to find a bunch of awesome information, media, and, basically a plethora of articles written by Mike and I and other activists. Make sure you guys share those on your social media networks like Twitter and Facebook. We're actually on those platforms as well, guys. Make sure you add us and invite your friends to like The Rundown Live on Facebook, Twitter, and all the other neat social platforms that are out there. If you're interested in supporting The Rundown Live, there's no better way than to check out Private Internet Access. Private Internet Access is what allows Mike and I to surf the internet anonymously. We can check our emails, download, conversate, do cool things like avoid Reddit bans or video game bans and things of that nature for those World of Warcraft and Call of Duty and who knows what other video games are out there right now, online game systems where you might get banned. This will help you avoid all those bans. Check it out. It covers 5 computers for a full year. If you guys want to know more about how this works, go to therundownlive.com, go into the search bar and type in Private Internet Access. Mike made a fantastic tutorial, and this is how we stay afloat. This is how we afford to continue this awesome broadcast. It's through these purchases, and you can use Bitcoin, PayPal, or your old gift cards if you'd like. $39.95 for full year or monthly for $7. Check it out. If you'd like to listen to a Rundown Live, there's no better way other than the TuneIn Radio app. The TuneIn Radio app is available as well on the tablet, cell phone, or PC. Download the app. It will allow you to get Mike and I, as well as all the other Truth Frequency broadcasters, including Popeye and Joseph and everyone else, Phoenix Rising Radio, all the other awesome broadcasters we're getting to know and love here on the network on 90.7 Denver FM.
Joseph because he only has one name, but he really has 2 names, but it's really only one name.
Well, isn't it Johemian Grove now? Did you see that? You made a little meme where he's making fun of the Bohemian Grove. It's Bohemian Grove.
Beaver. And for anyone that hasn't heard, we talked about that on the Hangar 18.
I'm assuming this has some kind of special innuendo, like Winona's big brown beaver.
He has a giant beaver in his backyard, and it's called Bohemian Grove, and apparently he barbecues babies back there. I'm not really sure. He's not here to defend himself, so we can't pick on him too much.
Oh, man. That's a horrible thing. We don't condone barbecuing of any humans, including babies, but there are others in the world that partake in this brutal ceremony at Bohemian Grove in California, including political leaders and elite politicians and the rich. Just saying, guys, it's just out there. You can Google it. Google Bohemian Grove. It's a real thing. But nonetheless, I want to say thanks to our syndication, FPRN, LibertyTalk.fm, Liberty Movement Radio, Conspiracy Wire, Wide Awake America. And I don't want to forget, guys, if you can't catch us live, there's no better way than to download the Rundown Live app to your Android telephone, cell phone, iTunes application store. It's available there as well for the iPhone, Amazon.com for the jailbroken phones, and the Windows platform. Go get the Rundown Live app, guys. It's free. You can download hundreds of our past episodes. You can email us show tips straight from the app, and you can even send us messages on Facebook and Twitter. So check that out. And if anyone out there knows how to improve our app and add the live stream to it, we're interested in custom work. If you guys can help out, check it out. Contact us, show tips at therundownlive.com. Give us your guest references. Send in your custom artwork. We like to use it and everything else, guys. So I want to say thanks again. 90.7 Denver FM, Truth Frequency Radio.
Sounds good, guys. 866-37-TRUTH. Kristan, did you know apparently, now this is according to science, which never may be questioned ever until it is questioned and proven wrong.
Well, like, they don't know. You know, then according to science, bumblebees can't fly, right? Because science can't explain how bees fly. So they're just kind of like an imaginary item. So don't believe in, bees or anything.
Well, yes, because science is never wrong until it's proven wrong. But today is apparently the saddest day of the year, and it's being called Blue Monday. Did you know this?
No clue. I have no idea. I've never heard of that. That sounds like a frosty beverage, Mike. I would like a Blue Monday. Can I get one of those?
It sounds, blue is like one of them excellent flavors.
Well, Blue Moon, I mean.
When people say blue, it's like my favorite fruit.
Yeah.
It's like purple. It just works for me,
blueberries.
Those are awesome fruits. That's a Simpsons reference anyway. But no, seriously. Blue Monday, never heard of it, but now scientists are just, I don't know who these scientists are, by the way, either, but they're telling us now that it's okay. Today is Blue Monday, so everybody, if you're depressed or feeling bad, it's okay because, scientists have formed an equation that uses 6 factors, including weather, debt, time since Christmas, failing New Year's resolutions, and low motivation. So
yeah, I want to know who out there is not living paycheck to paycheck these days, Mike. I think that people have less and less money. They're saving less and less money because there's no faith in the economy. What's the point in having hundreds of thousands of dollars when overnight it could be worth nothing? Which, inflation might be a big thing this year. Who knows? You're seeing bankers commit suicide. That's over 50 of them last year. So who knows?
But I'd have to wonder, wouldn't this have to do more with the sun? I mean, I think weather definitely plays a role in this. And when people are in wintertime and out of the sunlight, they start getting cabin fever and acting all crazy. So I don't know. It
almost sounds like Suicide Day. This is the day to think about suicide, guys. You want to off it? It's the Blue Monday, and that's the day to do it.
What about the failed resolutions? Remember we talked about?
Yes, that's exactly what this is. This is setting an artificial standard for something that we can't prove, that somebody pulled completely out of their behind, and they're like, I got a fact, guys. And this is based on, the weather. It's cold out. It's crappy. People are thinking of better places. They're thinking of family, and they're lonely because nobody's in relationships anymore because they can't afford them because nobody's working full time. Everyone's working 2 part-time jobs, and life is miserable.
For your safety. That's definitely why you have to have 7
and
jobs.
You can't get health care because nobody wants to give it to you because of the price. It's all part-time jobs. But yes, the jobs are in the increase, guys.
Let's take our first caller here. I believe we have our friend Gabe Brown on the line. How you doing, Gabe?
Not too bad. Just getting home a little while ago. We're out in the water today. Figured I'd call you up.
It's good to have you, man.
Yeah, it's always great to have you.
Yep. No, I figured I'd call you guys up. I actually missed the first few minutes of what you were all discussing because my audio is acting up on my computer. So I figured maybe you could bring me up to speed here.
It's Blue Monday, Gabe, according to science. So we're not going to even question science because they know what's best. And it's Blue Monday, so that's why you feel bad today, and just accept it.
And eventually it's going to be a day everyone commits suicide conveniently, right? Because everyone's going to be depressed.
Apparently.
It's the day to pick. But, and then we kind of touched base and stuff earlier. But, yeah, what do you think about Blue Monday and artificial fake holidays set by science now?
Well, it seems like our new god is establishing the new standard and the new status quo, so to speak. I mean, science is God, and by 2045, this God of ours will become fully aware of everything because it will be omnipresent through CCTV cameras and our entire tech apparatus. So, yeah, I mean, we're entering a new age of God.
Isn't that idiocracy? Isn't it idiocracy? The guy comes out of a time capsule and he's unscannable and he's unscannable and the whole system freaks out and it has to...
More and more when you look at these old movies that just come off as utterly ridiculous possibilities for humanity. How can humanity go down that path? I don't know. You watch Demolition Man, Idiocracy, whatever. More and more society is reflecting that type of atmosphere. I mean, just on an intellectual level.
Gabe, I know you may have called in for a reason, and while we're talking about movies, we already mentioned this in the beginning of the show. We might as well just crack the head on this and talk about it. David Crowley, Gray State, found dead. His family's dead. We don't really know what happened, okay? We don't have any facts here, but what we are being told by authorities is that it's apparent murder-suicide. The only witness testimony is that he looked in the window and seen the bodies next to a gun, and they were unrecognizable. And this is an interesting situation. I'm not really sure. Gabe, what's your take on it? Let's talk about this.
Well, obviously, I could speculate, and some of this might become a little bit of that. But this completely makes no sense to me how this could even have occurred. I know, we saw David at Bilderberg in 2012. I mean, people have seen him after that in 2013. Our friend Jeff Durkin has interviewed him and other producers or organizers for the Gray State film project. So, I mean, there was no indication that he had any intention, from my understanding, to, engage in a murder-suicide between himself and his family. It doesn't really make any sense to me. So I find this to be utterly shocking, for one thing.
Isn't that usual? Like when you see the people interviewed on the news and they're always like, I would have never expected that. Bob was such a nice guy, and then he hit his wife in the head with the shovel.
It is, Mike, and in this case, I really find it highly suspicious. I don't necessarily believe 100% that he could have done that. I am very skeptical that he would have went and did that, just because of the material that him and his team were working on being highly controversial, as it was, and critical of the very system, the government itself. We're talking about a man who went on interviews for different, alternative media outlets, and put a trailer out that nearly 1 million people have seen. If you look at the numbers, just from what we can tell, almost 1 million people have seen his trailer.
Well, an individual who was tied to the documentary actually contacted me. We were discussing a little bit, and he knew and he said that Crowley knew the documentary was about to be released was going to piss off quite a few people. He even said the movie is meant to send other people to prison. I knew David and helped with the social media on Great State. This is totally out of line for him. So that's from a close friend, one individual.
I I will tell you firsthand. I mean, I was interviewed. I mean, I'm sure maybe you were interviewed. A lot of people at Bilderberg were interviewed about their thoughts on the Bilderberg group, as well as many other topics the police state in their reflection of our contemporary times. And quite frankly, that there was footage that was to probably set alarms to some of the people who are controlling our society. And I don't know. I'm very skeptical. I don't believe he would kill himself. There's no reason for it. If you're busy on a groundbreaking project as that was, why would you off yourself and your family? It doesn't make any feasible sense. I don't know of anybody who's come out saying the man felt depressed enough to do this. I haven't seen anybody in our entire activist community speak of any language of that sort.
Well, and
at this point in time, or even when I heard about it last night.
Well, and not only that, sources close to to Crowley, have told me, or we've had discussions, that they were in talks about some serious movie deals. That Gray State looked like it was a legitimate thing. It was about to happen, or it was already happened. Silently. I'm not sure. I can't really get into the details. We'll know more later on this week. But I think somewhere along the line, they really got a lot of exposure and got a lot of help. And that might have scared some individuals. I don't know. That's all speculation, like you said.
It is speculation, but again, like I said, I find it odd because there's no evidence that suggests that he was willing to do this to himself. And his family, I mean, I'll just use Michael Rupert as an example of a man who did commit suicide, or at least we were told he did. I mean, in his case, there were people that confirmed he was highly depressed, and they did find a note, and his last show indicated that it was probably feasible that he might have killed himself. In this instance, however, I don't see anybody around his life, his personal life, coming forward saying, yeah, he felt depressed. I don't see any evidence of that. So, and I know that the nature of what he was working on was supposed to be groundbreaking and highly controversial. And, it was really going to expose a lot of this government, even though part of it was a fictional piece. As you know, fiction is very powerful in terms of, in the entertainment world and, the kind of audience that you can draw in. So the fact that these ideas have become, something that you could captivate an audience, that could be very troublesome to certain individuals. I'm not sure necessarily who would have, quote-unquote, killed him or whatever it was. I think this needs to be extended investigation. I think this entire matter needs to be further investigated.
Right.
To see if it was more than just a suicide murder or whatever you want to call it.
We don't have all the facts, Gabe, and there's been assumptions made already that David was the one that did this. We really don't know. When they say it was a murder suicide, but there's no details onto who committed the act. So
how would they even be able to determine that? I mean, wouldn't there be a suicide note? I mean, I'm quite curious.
Isn't that strange? And then you start to think like, well, if there was a note, that fits some type of programming where, they sent thugs to your house and they force you to sign the note and then they blow your head off, man.
People who commit suicide generally want to make a statement to let others know that was their intention, that they were highly depressed. I mean, that's in my experience dealing with people who have had suicidal thoughts. They generally want people to know that's what they were depressed and they were thinking about it. At least from my experience.
Well, that's
it doesn't make any sense.
Help. I'm not claiming I know what happened, but they're gone now, and we're gonna have to at least wait for the godly authorities to give us some type of information. Gabe, this is what I want to know. Why are details being withheld right now?
Well, that's exactly my point.
Details being withheld.
That's why it just seems ludicrous to me. I mean, the guy, they say he's been dead since around Christmas time, and
before the holidays, they said.
Yeah, if he was dead for this long, my question is this: what of his possessions in his house have possibly walked out of his house when he died? I mean, do whoever, if he was murdered, let's just say he was murdered, did somebody walk out with very important materials that might have been for the project. I have some interesting questions about that, because I mean there was a lot of, as you know, and they've made announcements on their Facebook page, you know, the Gray State folks, that they had a lot of materials that they were trying to cut down for the film, and they weren't sure how long to make the film. So I suspect they had a lot of materials, and my question is are those materials in safe hands, or were they walked out of that house? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, Gabe, and you know, I think the materials are in safe hands.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they are as well. I'm sure he made sure those are safe. Yeah.
There's copies.
Yes, there are.
People can't imagine that, you know, some shadowy entity could come in and kill people and take their stuff. But I mean, if you look for the last 50 years of quote-unquote activists, there have been instances where people have had their entire, you know, volume of information stolen right after they conveniently killed themselves.
We need to talk about this because there are some interesting things here. I've known David for years. Okay, I've hung out with the guy, met him multiple times. We were at Paul Fest, events in Minnesota. We had NATO 2012. We had Bilderberg. So I mean, we interacted quite a bit. We interviewed Mark Dice. I mean, so like these guys are pretty cool with us. I read the script of the movie, the Rise. I saw the backstage version. So I mean, like these guys were really close. So I'm not really sure.
Did this guy give you the impression that he had the crazed intention to go kill his wife and his child, his 5-year-old child?
His wife, and we went out to dinner, and it was awesome, and everything was really fun, and Luke R. was there, and a bunch of well-known activists, and we had a great time.
That's why I find this to be odd. I mean, we've all, you know, for the amount, regardless of the amount of time we interacted with the individual, I mean, we're talking about a guy we've actually interacted with. And none of these things that I don't know if you read the European press report on this. They didn't even, if I remember correctly, they didn't even mention what movie project he was working on. They made it sound like he was a crazy maniac who owned guns and wanted to kill his family.
He was a Marine, right? An ex-Marine, and he had post-traumatic stress syndrome or something.
You know, he's going to go crazy here. So you would think, when you're reading the story, you think you're reading the story about some crazy maniac. Not like the guy that we all met in person. I mean, we're talking about a real human being that we actually met in person here, and that's why I find this story to be fascinating to me and very interesting, because we're not just talking about some guy we never met before. We're talking about a real human being we've met. So that's why I have a little bit of an interest in this story, because I want to know, this needs to be investigated, and we need to know, where's the suicide note? Where's the stuff that was in the house? Did anything walk out of the house?
And let's just say, you know, I'm beating around the bush here, but the average people, from what I'm seeing from the comments and YouTube and Reddit, is that people think the government did this. And it's like, I don't know if that can even be true, but that is crazy.
Well, the two things you always look at in a situation, if it was a crime, was who had the money to gain from this and who had the power to gain from this, who was threatened by this. And you know, the video was very anti-establishment, very anti-government. What the crazy thing is very prophetic. I mean, look at Ferguson. It looked like almost exactly like he predicted in the video, you know?
The video has an image that is becoming rather commonplace in instances like Ferguson. I mean, you can there's many other instances you can use examples of. I'll use an example. I'll put it this way. People would be like, well, why would the government or why would some shadowy entity want to go kill this guy and his family? Who is he? How is he important? Well, let me ask you this, Mike. Why would Homeland Security be questioning you about what you know of certain individuals during the G8? When you're just a regular guy. I mean, they held you in there for 7 hours asking you, from what I remember, rather ridiculous questions, as if they were asking you if you knew as if you were associated with Osama bin Laden directly. They treated you in that kind of fashion, like they wanted to know information about people who, quite frankly, just hatch information out, or video document confrontations, and they treat it like it's a serious, high-level threat. So I mean,
afraid. So you do have a point. They act like you're a legitimate terrorist when you're just a regular
So
old person.
it makes you think. It's like some people would be like, well, why would they go out of their way to do that? Well, I mean, you experienced personally, Mike, them interrogating you about really asinine things as if they were high-level security threats. So obviously somebody is taking an interest into the thoughts and opinions of individuals who may very well be critical of the entire apparatus in the system. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not ruling out the possibility that it was a murder, not a murder-suicide.
Because we're about to go to break here on TFR. We got a short 3-minute break, guys. Stay tuned. 866-37-TRUTH if you want to get in the convo. We got to talk about a few more details of this case because, this is someone I considered a friend, so we need to figure this out.
Exactly.
Right back, guys.
Chris and Sheree Geo here, founders of Truth Frequency Radio. We just wanted to take a moment to thank all of you for making TFR the biggest and the best independent radio station out there.
When we first entered the alternative media...
All right, we're still live on Liberty Movement Radio, libertymovementradio.com, as well as on livestream.com/BigPZone, therundownlive.com/live. And, this is a interesting conversation. I want to kind of save the next half of it for when we get back on the air with TFR, but we should really talk about how this is going to be used to manipulate people after the fact once the details come out, and also some of the details of the gray state, how it was recently going Hollywood, and maybe Dave met with the wrong people. We really don't know. So we have to keep an open mind. We don't have all the details. We're not claiming we know. We're talking about it, and that's perfectly acceptable. We can do that.
Well, and the whole gray state thing, I have the trailer playing.
You're muted.
Oh, and so the whole gray state thing, it's fantastic. I actually have the trailer playing. If you guys want to watch the trailer, check out the chat room if you guys aren't there, therundownlive.com/live. And there you can chat with Mike and I and, 87, 100 other viewers and that are in the chat. You can chat with all of us. Feel free to call us, guys. The number's on the website. Feel free to give us a call, as well as at the studio here, 414-455-4333. So, I don't know, Mike. It's very sad. We never want to believe these kinds of things can happen, especially to people we know and, have worked with and care about, that are passionate about the same ideals, especially when it's somebody that is so passionate in this kind of, industry. When you're talking about truth and honesty and exposing cronyism, I don't really think people who expose cronyism are really that depressed, Mike. They just want to expose the truth and do the right thing for humanity. And if they're going to do the right thing for the large group, I think they're going to make a lot of these responsible decisions on the individual level because they know what's best for the individual as well. So it's very weird and it's very troubling, but we don't know. We don't know if he was on medication or, all those other weird things that are possibilities.
I'm going to speculate a little bit.
Hey, Gabe, just wait. Hold 1 second. We got to go back live. Here goes 20 seconds.
Sure.
Remember, hemp protein powder contains 53% protein, is gluten-free, anti-inflammatory, non-GMO, and is loaded with nutrients. Call 888-910-4367, 888-910-4367, and see what our powder, seeds, and oil can do for you. Only at hempusa.org.
The Covert Report with Susan Lindauer. Saturday and Sunday on Truth Frequency Radio.
The Rundown, Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Check out therundownlive.com. Mike P, Kriston H, The Rundown, Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Check out therundownlive.com.
Rundown.
866-37-TRUTH if you guys want to get into the convo. We're talking about David Crowley and his family found dead in their home, Minnesota area. Writer and director of the supposed movie Gray State, which I'm sure we'll never see now. This is interesting. Apparently, they were in the home for weeks. I mean, how is this possible, guys? How is this possible that David, with all these contacts and friends who I messaged a month ago on Facebook, by the way, to try to get a hold of them, how does this happen? How does a guy go unnoticed for a month? How does his wife go unnoticed for a month? How does the daughter go unnoticed for a month? Where are their families? Where are the friends? What happened here? How
everyone just connected so much into the the matrix here, Mike. They're either on a cell phone or texting, and I talked to a few people, and they said that they were concerned because normally he got back to them 2 or 3 days after they called, but he didn't get back to them for weeks, and so they were suggesting people check on him. Maybe not everyone lived near him, but you would think that if his family would have checked on him much sooner, or somebody.
This seems. I gotta tell you, this seems to be becoming more and more common in our society. There's an example. I'll tell you of a story that happened locally here with a kid who committed suicide. He hung himself in a tree on a golf course in the town of Locust Valley, which is not too far from where I live. And he had been missing for months, and nobody even filed a report. His family didn't even wonder, hey, he's not coming to Christmas, he's not coming to Thanksgiving. They found his body decaying in the top of a 100-foot tree where he hung himself in. And the only reason they found his body is because the backpack he had on his back fell off his dead body and landed on the ground as somebody was on the golf course. So that's how devoid, I guess, society has become, where people are literally end up dead because they committed suicide and nobody even realizes it for months. I heard a story where a man was working in an office. He worked himself quite literally to death. His dead body was sitting on a desk, and nobody for a week noticed that he had died. He just sat at work all day and night. Nobody even thought to check. Is this guy even alive?
Don't they have regulations in at the post offices that people don't collect their mail more than 7 or 8 days without letting their postman know that they should alert authorities? I think there's something like that, because the mailman is a person that visits your house the most. You're the most intimate person. They know you by your first name. They know when you're home, when you're not home. So I think I'm not sure.
I guess you would think that, but maybe a lot of people take vacations for a month, and they don't really report that they don't have their mail. It's just so odd. But I will say what I was going to say. Besides that, because you did ask the question, and I tried to answer as best I could on that front. I don't know. I mean, if you look at the atmosphere of the last 6 years, primarily, I'm sure you all recall the DHS document of right-wing extremists and who they specifically put in that list. I mean, the number one threat they had were returning veterans that would become hostile towards the system. It doesn't necessarily have to define, violent type hostility. It could be a verbal type hostility towards the system itself, the way it's operating. And if anybody has anything hostile to say about the system, it should be the returning veterans who've been vastly disrespected by the president and by the entire government itself. Refuse to take care of these people.
The mental state of some of these returning vets, though, because they are very unstable. They can be. They've been really manipulated, and
they've been put on a lot of psychotropic drugs. I mean, many of them have, and that's how the government is dealing with the problem. They program them to such a degree that they don't spend enough time investing towards deprogramming these individuals back into, integrate them into regular society. So yeah, you do have a lot of psychological issues with many of these soldiers, no doubt. But as far as this individual, I mean, I'll bring up two individuals that the government has, killed, basically, as far as my understanding. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it. I'm sure you all remember Pat Tillman, who was Pat Tillman, who got fragged in, I believe it was Iraq. Or Afghanistan. Remember the football player? He was playing football and he decided to quit so he could serve his country as a soldier. And well, he got fragged, by friendly fire, from what I've heard. And what the government and our media has done is they turned him into an idol that is thrown in front of our face during football games, and they make him out to be this big hero. But meanwhile, from what I've heard, the families were receiving letters saying that the government was doing horrible things overseas. I mean, poppy fields and protection of not really doing their job, and he had concerns. He wanted to go public, and well, he's dead. And now he's turned into a national icon that is used for propaganda purposes.
With a twisted story that no one's going to believe because you're a conspiracy theorist if you tell the true story, right?
Well, I'll give you another example of a story that the government has twisted, and it just happened, quite frankly, recently. As much as, many of us do not like, what Chris Kyle has been used for, when they claim he punched Jesse Ventura in the face, and he got killed by a crazed gunman, and well, he was a veteran of sorts, and now they're using his image on television in this new movie Sniper to project a fairy tale adventure of an epic man who has been disputed whether he actually did these things. But regardless, I mean, have you seen the commercial for the trailer of this film where they have a child picking up an RPG and he's looking at the child like he's got to kill that child? Yeah, they turned him into a icon, even though we may not have liked what he tried to do to Jesse Ventura and others. They've also used him as pro-system propaganda too. And I heard he was trying to train people on firearms training for the most part, and then he just got snuffed out by a crazed gunman who, that a lot of people have questions about whether, that gunman was sent there or not. But he's another veteran that was used as state propaganda, and he was targeted. If you look at all these veteran, or, people who are either serving or veterans, they are definitely targets. I read the DHS documents. They are the number one threat to the apparatus of security of this country. So, with all that said, Mike, the reason I bring up those two people and that document is because, and I asked the question, why would David Crowley, I mean, he's just making a film. Why would somebody want to kill him? Well, he was a veteran. He would be more of a threat to the system than you or I, since neither of us have served. We may speak badly about the government and critical of it, but a veteran who does the same is a higher standard list of being targeted, I would suspect.
Good point.
What I'm getting at.
And that's a rational point. That it makes sense to me. The thing is, I know what the media and the police and FBI want us to think. They want us to believe that Crowley did it, but yet we've been given no proof that he had actually committed this act. You know what I mean?
There's no evidence of cause for him to do this. None.
And I don't know if that necessarily matters because, individuals, if something happens dramatic in their life, you just never know. You just never know. Especially if there's issues that were uncovered. None of us were David Crowley. You know what I mean? As much as you love the person, just like none of us are Gabe Brown except for Gabe Brown. None of us are Kristan Harris except for Kristan. None of us are Mike Chesney except for me. The
only thing I could say, Mike, is that there would be some kind of evidence. There would be somebody close enough to know him that would understand this about him. You can't go through life hiding something of that magnitude where you want to kill yourself. Somebody's going to know.
By the time, though, maybe that's why no one literally knew. Maybe, I hate to be realistic, but maybe that happened. Maybe the deal fell through, and maybe he snapped. I'm just saying
if the deal did fall through, then the deal breaker would have to come out and explain how that didn't work out, and all of these. That's what I mean. There would be some kind of paper trail that would, it would give credence to this possibility. And like I said, I gave Michael Rupert as an example before. I mean, there's a lot of evidence that I've seen from people close to him that would suggest that he probably did kill himself. And I mean, Michael Rupert was clearly an unhappy person, and
he made it clear, right?
So therefore, what I'm saying, I don't see any evidence of the type that I recall with Michael Rupert in this instance of this individual. I don't see that. I don't see anybody coming forward expressing that kind of point. If I see more of that come out, then I'll be less skeptical, is what I'm getting at. I'm highly skeptical of this because I don't see anybody coming out saying that or pointing out evidence of that. All I see is everyone saying, oh, he was a crazed gunman, that he was a vet, so he's going to kill his family. That's all I see the media projecting. I don't see them putting people out there who knew him personally, who could vouch that, yeah, he was an unhappy person and things didn't work out with the deal like you're saying.
It's a piece of propaganda to hide the truth. Let's not forget Andrew Breitbart and Michael Hastings, who both had odd deaths recently. It just almost seems like slowly but surely it's like a systematic possible purge, but I'm not going to say you should put any eggs in that.
This is almost becoming like the Clinton era all over again. I'm sure you remember all the people who conveniently killed themselves around Clinton, who generally had damning information about the administration. I mean, people shoot themselves twice in the head, their bodies thrown on railroad tracks, cars blowing up, suicides everywhere. It's almost like this administration is almost reminiscent of the Clinton era administration, and it kind of makes sense in a way since there's so many Clinton era people involved with it. It has to raise questions. I mean, like I said, Mike, I have to be highly skeptical of this entire murder-suicide case, at least until somebody comes forward and can confirm that, yeah, the man was depressed, he wanted to do this. I need some kind of assurance in that regard, that was feasible.
You might forget that, because the idea that he could have been there that long with no one knowing is crazy to me. No parents, no family, no school, no nothing, no one. Like, that's insane to me. Like, I had people contact me and say, if my kid, didn't go to their friend's house for 2 or 3 days, there'd be like the whole neighborhood of kids knocking at the door, like, wondering where the hell the kid's at. So, that's weird. Like,
but he did travel a lot. He was traveling a lot.
Let's talk about this. He recently went to Hollywood.
Yep.
And he just talked to what else? Movie execs about what? Pitching the Gray State for millions of dollars.
And Gray State did get pitched, and from inside sources, it sounded like it was incredibly successful. I'm not going to put words in anyone's mouth, but that's the impression that was left with me.
That's rumor anyway.
Yes.
I mean,
it just seems like there was too much positive to the point where this could crash down like this, and unless it was intentionally assisted.
And they were throwing around big names too with this whole deal.
They were throwing around big names, but what if it fell apart? And, he couldn't handle it, I'm just speculating.
There had to be other business partners involved with that would be aware of this. And if those people indeed exist, if those people exist and they do listen to the show, they need to come forward and express that point. Because at this point, that secret should come out, because it doesn't matter anymore.
No, you're right. The
dead.
People involved do listen. You're right. No, the people that worked with David, they listen to the show. They know who they are. And they know that they haven't talked to him for a while. That's the truth.
I mean, I as you know, Mike, I sometimes don't get to call your show for a long time or get to talk to you. I get busy, and we all get busy. We don't get to talk to each other all the time. And that does happen. I mean, I'm sure David was running around trying, like you said, he went to Hollywood to try to, pitch the film. I'm sure some of his film people were probably busy too. I mean, they all have, private lives. But I don't know. I just look at this case and it just, none of it makes sense to me. I haven't heard anyone confirm around his life personally that spends time with him and his family come out and say he felt this way, he had to do this. I just don't see evidence of that. And I'd like for somebody to come out if they have that, evidence, to bring that forth, because I'll be at least a little bit more assured that that was a possibility. I'm skeptical for a reason. I'm not just skeptical because I want to badmouth the government. If the government had nothing to do with this, the guy killed himself, then the guy killed himself. There's nothing I can do.
Right.
It makes sense, but I don't see evidence that makes sense of that.
I'm worried that what's already happening, we can't stop, which is the idea he may have not even done this, and it's going to go out and make it look real bad. It's going to tarnish the image. He talked about real controversial information, and it causes people to, discredit that. What if he didn't do this, and now everybody just kind of throws him under the bus? So it's like, it's really difficult. Why are there details being withheld? Usually when people are murdered, like the Sikh temple, you knew within hours that, there was a guy and he had a gun and da-da-da-da-da, and there was press conferences.
More than one person, possibly,
Well, and the idea is, there's not much detail here, and they're like, we're going to give it to the medical examiner, and we'll find out in 8 days, and it's like, well, great, like, now what? If there was any, actual wrongdoing there, it's over. It's long gone. And what I have to think is, if this wasn't a family incident, which I highly suspect it was, 95% sure that this was a family incident, but the other 5% of me is still there. My conspiracy theory side thinks that maybe he went out to LA and met with the wrong person. They, wanted to get rid of him because he talked about controversial things. And I'm not saying the government, because the things that were going to be featured in the movie were controversial. They weren't necessarily
controversial about corporations as well as government entities, correct?
Yep.
There was lots.
So there's any number of factors that could have had done him in if he was done in by some, shadowy entity.
Well, I mean, the whole movie is basically a map of what's happening now into the future, and that's what's so scary, is it's gonna awake a lot of individuals up, because these are real issues and these are real situations that the general population feels very strongly about. Irregardless of what kind of establishment and organized goons get in, the general populace differs from most of the politicians. Look at Congress's 7% approval rating, just to show that we can vote in a bunch of people we don't want, however that happens. Look at the corporation power there to be able to lobby and do these kinds of things.
Also, secret societies, the idea that there's these
triangle
behind the scenes. Well, it is kind of behind the back, where people aren't necessarily in the main view of the public, and they're really calling the shots. And the idea that if there were some type of insurrection, an American revolution, so to speak, those entities who we see these days, we say the Freemasons, Illuminati, elite, whatever, those are the entities who take control in a situation as that. That's why we see the MREPs. That's why we keep talking about this, because there was a lot of truth to the gray state. So whether or not, David did this or his wife, they're gone, and this movie is gone, guys. This is over. The movie, this was David's vision, and I can't make this movie. No one else can give the life that Gray State had to this movie other than David Crowley, and now he is no longer a threat. And like Gabe was saying earlier, he was a vet. He had credibility. The way he was envisioning making this movie, the A-list actors that they had planned to sign on to this was a big deal. And I could see him getting very upset if it didn't work out. I just would have to say that for the people listening, if there are people depressed out there, whatnot, there's other people out there. We all have problems. The world is very frustrating. We talk about a lot of the negative things here, and I wish we didn't have to do that, but we showcase those things and we try to, break them down and understand them instead of being frustrated. But, we like to have a good time here, but these issues are very, very serious, and, we can't let them consume our lives to the point of doing some violent extreme act, because that's exactly what this system wants. They're gearing up for people to do things like this. And I'm not saying that I know what happened, but I know that the system is planning for individuals to do stuff like this. So, this is what they're planning for.
Mike, I'm amazed at how watered down the media has presented this, though. They could really run with this about this anti-government kook who killed his family and kids, who made, they think of what direction they could go with this. And
I don't think they want that trailer to become common knowledge to, they've already had 1 million views just about for that trailer. Anybody can go search
and
it
that jumped a ton recently.
The concept trailer. So this just goes to show you, quite frankly, it could come down to a point where even if this film is never made, maybe somebody could tackle on the project of making a film about the person who has killed his family.
Much better idea.
Or the film that never got made because of his life's ending.
Well,
it sounds almost like a movie in itself worth being made.
Absolutely, I agree. And, I'd hope that, David didn't do this. As his friend, I hope that he did not do this. I really hope so. And let's hope that when we hear the facts, that he didn't do it. But you know what? It doesn't look good, and, we got to hear the facts. That's all I'm saying.
As you know, Mike, I try to be as realistic and as, logical as I can possibly be when it comes to the, I'm trying to be grounded here about all of the quote-unquote conspiracy-oriented sounding stuff. I try to bring the most logical sounding thing I can imagine. Well, when I look at this case, like I've been saying, I just don't see a great deal of evidence that suggests that he was the kind of person that wanted to go this way. So until I see that, like I did with the Michael Rupert case, which, a lot of people think he was murdered, I don't necessarily think he was murdered because I saw enough evidence that suggested to me from people surrounding him and Michael's own tone that he probably did kill himself, and I accept that. He probably killed himself. Now, in this case, I don't see a lot of the same overlapping evidence that would suggest that, and until I do, I'm going to hold a very skeptical view that he was involved with a murder-suicide pact to kill his family. There's no suicide note. It's just, what do you go out on a rant, out on the limb and just say, hey, I'm going to grab a gun and just kill you all? It just doesn't seem like a feasible, logical thing for somebody to do who wants to kill themselves.
And maybe, we didn't know the real David Crowley. Maybe we didn't know.
Somebody knew the real David Crowley, and that somebody needs to come out and explain to the world what they knew. Because I'll tell you, Mike, we all have secrets. The whole world has secrets. But there's at least one person who knows those secrets, and that one person, they can verify whether somebody had the intent to do something of this sort, and they can testify to that fact.
I think you're right. You got to work with the facts, and you're absolutely right, Gabe. I think
until somebody comes out and says something, I'm going to hold a skeptical view. But again, if somebody can prove beyond reasonable doubt to me that this man, David Crowley, is capable of these, characteristics, I'm willing to accept that fact, that maybe the man really did feel that way enough to do that to his family, which I feel very unfortunate.
We're running out of time. I appreciate you hanging out with us and talking about this terrible incident on Blue Monday. We're gonna follow this and find out what really happened. Gabe Brown, you're always welcome. Anytime, call us back, man.
God bless, man.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Kristan.
Take it easy. There goes Gabe Brown. Gabe brings really concise, thought-out points, and he really makes a lot of great points that make you think, because I don't want to jump on that conspiracy boat because I know this guy.
It's not MK Ultra, Mike. It has to be MK Ultra mind control.
I don't know. I know this guy, and I see the animal side of people. It's something about spirituality, and you can sense it. You see in their eyes, and you can see when people have the potential to snap. And he was in the military. He was trained to kill. That's something.
Who knows what kind of military programs he was involved with either.
But we didn't even touch on that, whether he was in intelligence and the other people he was involved with, and we really don't know the
Could
date.
have been somebody from his past. Never know.
There's a lot of what ifs, but the point is, his family's gone now. There is going to be no movie
that we know of. But I think
releasing The Rise uncut so people can see it. We know how to get that. And just stay tuned, guys. Phoenix Rising Radio is coming up next. Truth Frequency is an awesome home for us. We've been having a great time here. We're going to be live all week, hanging out 8 p.m. Central. TheRundownLive.com is the website. It has a bunch of awesome articles. Kristan, anything else before we're out of here?
If you guys know anything about this, feel free to reach out to Mike and I. Show tips at therundownlive.com, guys. Don't forget to download the app. It's free. Send us your images, art, and any news that you think we should be covering. Show tips at therundownlive.com. Thanks again for tuning in. Denver 90.7 FM, Milwaukee. You guys stay classy, and check out the Gray State trailer. And who knows, maybe I think the movie should be released, Mike, because that would say that they can't win, that they cannot bully this. Or
who's gonna make it? It's David's vision.
It
it's
is.
like.
Truth Freak.
RundownLive.com.
Green Bay Packers lost. Oh,
crappy game. Oh my. Well, it was an excellent game, but
Aaron Rodgers had the worst game he has played in the last 3 years on that game. By the way, he threw 2 interceptions. He hasn't done that since like 2011 or something. One game.
What a ridiculous bunch of crap. But you know what? I'm over it. I don't feel.
Why don't you go for it on 4th and 1, and then again on 4th and 2? You could have been up 21-0, Mike. It was ridiculous. It was heartbreaking. It was gut wrenching. There's no way we should have lost the entire game in the last 4 minutes.
Here was so nervous. It was crazy, man.
That reminds me of the Elway Montana game where they scored 9 touchdowns in under 5 minutes. It was something ridiculous like that.
I can't even believe it. It was ridiculous. But that being said, oh well. You know what I mean?
I know. I'm sad. The Seahawks shouldn't be there. Pats should be.
Game. Like, I'm not even upset.
Now we know how Dallas feels.
I personally wouldn't even have gone there. I have chosen to move on.
I know. I just wanted to say, Boss Dix needs to go play for the Bears.
It's just a game,
Yeah, I know.
Our team lost, big deal, whatever. There's always bigger problem.
I bet you weren't saying that yesterday. I wanted to hear.
No, I'm a huge football fan. Don't get me wrong. I understand the game. I love the game, but at the end of the day, it's just the game. And I'm a grown ass man. And if my yellow and green team doesn't win, I'm not gonna beat my wife.
Yeah, it's not gonna ruin your day.
Right, and I saw people out mad at the gas station, like a skirt, like at 2 a.m. Drunk as hell because they're mad about the Packer game.
Well, you go for it on 4th and 1 and 4th and 2.
Take away from this the point, which is people getting mad about a Packer game. Think about what happens in people's lives and how they manage their anger. And, this is really what we get into, managing your humanity, managing yourself, being self-accountable, these things that we've been preaching on the Rundown Live. I mean, how could this be when you're, actually holding yourself accountable and not committing violence against others? And
violence doesn't solve anything, guys. That's why non-aggression principle is the most important unless you're protecting your life. You have the right to defend yourself. So,
well, it's good that at least there are now police radars that can see inside your house. But maybe we
talked about this. Remember the glasses, that the X-ray glasses the cops are getting, so they can just kind of check out you and your wife going at it and stuff like that.
Proud of you guys. RundownLive.com. We're back tomorrow!
Tuesday!
Mike P, Kriston H. The Rundown, Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Check out therundownlive.com. The Rundown, Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Check out therundownlive.com.
What's up, everybody? This is Johnny English with Broken Man Radio. This isn't a vaping thing or anything like that. This is actually Broken Man Radio. This is a subject that I would normally deal with on my show once we do come back, and we are going to come back. We are definitely coming back very soon. Something I wanted to talk about real quick. This is going to be hitting the news. The mainstream news has already picked it up, and of course, the alternative news is going to be picking it up as well. Tomorrow they'll just be running rampant. You'll be able to hear it on just about every show. Well, at least the ones that actually are doing what they should be doing. If you haven't heard, I'll put the link in the description of this news story. The one I'm JJ on my Facebook page. Thank you so much for posting this, and Joshua as well. I been looking at this, and I cannot believe, I've been reading the comments on the story. I can't believe that people are actually believing that this is a murder-suicide. And I'm going to read this. Apple Valley couple, child dead in apparent murder-suicide. I don't know who it's apparent to. It's obviously apparent to the idiots who wrote this story, or whoever is directing them to write this garbage and put it out there in the mainstream and hope. Well, they're not going to have to hope very much, because let's be realistic here, folks. Most of you are asleep. Most of you are sheep. You don't want to stir up the pot. You just want to keep living your stupid lives and keep your cars in your garage and be able to brag and keep your great jobs and your big houses and swim in your pools and entertain your neighbors and get drunk and have sex with everybody and do whatever it is you want to do. You're not concerned with freedom, and you're not concerned with what's really going on in the world and the evil, the evil that's going on and has been going on for years and years and years, and how at some point we could have changed it, and we still could, but you're not going to get off your lazy ass and do it. You're not gonna wake up. You can't, because you might lose something. You might not be able to drive your Escalade or your new Corvette or whatever it is you drive, and you're not going to be able to entertain your family and friends and brag about what you have and all that good stuff. You're not going to be able to do that. You're not going to be able to go to whatever the favorite store is you like to shop and buy your overpriced clothes. You buy it just because you can say that you have it. Just garbage like that. You're not going to, because then all that might go away. You're afraid that might disappear. You're afraid. And you're always going to be afraid. You're going to be sheep forever. And hey, the end's coming soon, so it doesn't matter. But it does matter, because we could have fixed this a long time ago, but we chose not to. Okay, we're all totally responsible. But anyway, Apple Valley, Minnesota, Apple Valley couple, child dead in apparent murder-suicide. And I can tell you right now, and I'll tell you at the end when I'm done with reading this story, why I think it was not a murder-suicide, that it was obviously a murder. It was definitely a murder, but not a murder-suicide committed by this man on his family. I wish I had the technology, or I've got the technology, I just don't have the program to show you. I would show you and scroll through the story so you could see it and read it for yourself. But I will have the link in the description. Hopefully the link will stay up and you will still be able to see the story. But a couple and their child were killed in an apparent murder-suicide in Apple Valley, police said Sunday. So Sunday, they reported this. Saturday is when they found the bodies, Saturday the 17th. around 1 p.m. Now, the police would not identify the victims on Sunday. However, a neighbor who discovered the body said they were David Crowley, his wife, Cornell. I think it's Cornell or Kamel. I'm going to say Kamel. I don't know her. I apologize to the family if I screw this up. And their 5-year-old daughter, Rainey. I'm going to guess that's Rainey, R-A-N-I, Rainey. The neighbor, Colin Prochnow, Prochnow, said he had a passing acquaintance with the family. His wife, Judy, said our grandkids would go over and play with their daughter. Now, keep in mind, this child was 5 years old. 5 years old. So if the people next door had kids that were that young, grandkids that were that young, then they allowed them to go over to their house and play. That means the houses had to be fairly close. Okay, they weren't half a mile down the street or a quarter mile down the street. They had to be pretty close. And if you saw a picture of the house, you would see it's just an average house, a one-car garage, attached garage. It's something you'd see here in Iowa. It's a standard Midwestern town or house that's nothing special. You know, it's nothing special, nothing big or anything like that. Just an average house. And obviously it was probably in a subdivision, some sort of subdivision, not low income or anything like that, but just an average subdivision. You know, average house, average subdivision. This person, David Crowley, you're probably wondering, I haven't gotten to it yet, you're probably wondering, well, why is it so important that this David Crowley got killed and his whole family? David Crowley he made the trailer for a little movie called Gray State. Gray State. Gray State. Google it. Go Google it, and you'll understand. Please, let's see. Where did I leave off? The neighbor, blah, blah, blah. It isn't known exactly when the three died, but the Prochnows believe it was near Christmas. Okay. Almost a month ago, they believe that there was no more life seen in the house. That's when they stopped seeing signs of life in the house. It's what the story says. I assume they had gone somewhere for Christmas. However, this is the 17th at the time, the 17th when they were discovered, the 17th of January. So we're talking 3 weeks past Christmas, almost a month, and they haven't seen any sign of life. The neighbors became suspicious last week when they noticed the same lights on in the home day and night. So after a month, they finally got suspicious. Colin Prochnow decided to check on them Saturday. As he approached the front door, he noticed Christmas presents sitting unopened on the doorstep. He peered into the house and saw 3 bodies and a handgun on the floor and then called police. According to police radio messages recorded by the Minnesota Police, or mnpoliceclips.com, so mnpoliceclips.com, police reported finding the obviously deceased bodies on the first floor of the home along with a very angry dog. So the dog was still alive. The dog looked thin and he was already skinny to begin with, Prochnow said. According to David Crowley's LinkedIn profile, he served in the U.S. Army. After 5 years, I had had enough and left to pursue filmmaking, unquote, the profile says. Crowley, who attended the Minnesota School of Business, wrote and directed a movie, Gray State. The trailer for the film shows FEMA agents spying on and killing hundreds of Americans. The tagline for the film is, "The Second American Revolution may not be remembered." YouTube videos show him promoting the film at several events, including a Ron Paul rally in Florida in 2012. So I guess he made the movie. He didn't make the trailer. He actually made the movie. Twin Cities actor Charles Hubble starred in the trailer for Gray State, which appears to appeal to conspiracy theories. Hubble said he doesn't believe that Crowley, whom he described as efficient, disciplined, passionate, and inspirational, believed fully in all the conspiracy theories of government takeover that make up his film. Now, that I'll believe, because I think there's a lot of people that do internet radio that don't believe it. I think there's a lot of people that do alternative news that don't believe what they're saying. I don't think they believe it at all. I think they're trying to make a buck. That's what I think. And this is probably what this guy was doing. Unfortunately, he made the wrong movie. That was his problem. He made the wrong movie. When we talked about Gray State, I told him I'm not really into conspiracies, Hubble said Sunday. I told him I'm a Buddhist, atheist, tree-hugging liberal, which in itself doesn't even make sense, because you can't be a Buddhist if you're an atheist. You don't believe in any gods. You don't believe in any religion. But I digress. And with a wink in his eye, he said, I'm just trying to get something out here. He always had that wink in his eye. He told me he had found a niche, a target audience, and could feed off that niche. So again, this guy probably was just trying to make money on the conspiracy theory crowd, the alternative news crowd. And that's, hey, it happens. It's happening all over the place. Why do you think I left for so long? I just got sick of it. Other people having other agendas. They're trying to suck you in, talking about things they think you want to hear, but their hidden agenda doesn't come out until later. Like they want you to believe their new age garbage, or they want you to believe some other garbage. They suck you in talking about FEMA camps and blah, 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 and all this other crap. And then, in the meantime, they're slowly working you. They're slowly working you like a sideshow act. So it's kind of what this guy was doing. So I don't agree with how this guy was doing this. But the fact is, he made this movie, Gray State, about FEMA camps and all this other stuff. And I'm sure the powers that be, whoever they are, well, we kind of know who they are. They probably weren't real happy about it. And it was probably gaining a lot of popularity, because people don't usually get taken out until they get to a certain level. That's why you see so many people doing videos. That's why you see so many people doing internet radio and doing alternative news, because a lot of them don't even have the following to even raise an eyebrow. They're not following, even if they have 1,000 listeners or 1,000 views or 1,000 subscribers or even 5,000 subscribers. That's not enough to catch any attention. That's not enough to really raise any eyebrows of the people that are actually running the show. They don't care about that. That's just a few thousand people. But Gray State, kind of grabbed a few people. It grabbed a lot more people. And there was a chance that people were going to look at this and go, whoa, maybe this isn't really a conspiracy theory. Now, I know it's not a conspiracy theory. I know FEMA camps exist. I know all these things. I've seen enough evidence to know that they exist. The Crowley family would come to the Hubble house for dinner, and then they left at the end of the night, or when they left at the end of the night. Now, this Hubble guy, remember, he's one of the actors in the movie, and he was kind of, I guess, close with Crowley. Hubble said he and his wife would stand in the doorway watching the couple leave and say, "It's always great to have young, gorgeous people come to our house and look as happy as they are." Now, for one, I don't believe for a second this guy